Chapter 2996. Evil God Rocky acted like he had a bad signal. His movements were slow. Facing Bifla's attack, he couldn't dodge at all. Of course, Qin Zhao was the culprit for his abnormal behavior. The flames seeped into Rocky's body once more. Evil God Rocky spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't move anymore. He became really weak. Qin Zhao's small world could easily suppress Evil God Rocky. Bifla walked in front of Rocky. He was as proud as Evil God Loki. He looked down at Bifla. "Human, I acknowledge you. You are strong. In terms of using flames, you even surpass me. I am willing to submit to you and teach you all my techniques." Bifla revealed a faint smile. Evil God Rocky's lips curled into a smile. A momentary victory wasn't the key to deciding the outcome. In Rocky's life, no, in his mind, there was a word that was engraved in his dictionary: betrayal. He didn't need a reason, or rather, betrayal was his reason. To him, it wasn't unacceptable for him to bow down to Odin temporarily. Didn't he bow down to Odin in the past? Now, it was just a different person. When the time was right, he didn't mind starting another battle of dusk. "You will be the new fire god. No, you can become the supreme god." Evil God Rocky understood humans too well. He believed that no one would be able to reject his allegiance and allegiance. No one could reject this supreme power. Moreover, he had many ways to break free from all sorts of restrictions. Be it a vow or a contract, they weren't true restrictions on him. "Sorry, I don't need your loyalty." Bifla shook his head and said. Evil God Rocky was stunned. He couldn't help but raise his head and look at Bifla. He didn't expect that the human would be so calm. Facing his loyalty, he didn't show any signs of being moved at all. This wasn't something that one should do when one was suppressing his excitement. This calmness made him feel uneasy. Evil God Rocky didn't notice it at all. Bifla had passed the age where he would be swayed by such words. "Then, what do you want?" "I can give you everything." "I'm afraid you can't." Bifla shook his head. "Right, I have been locked up for so long and I have nothing." Evil God Rocky mocked himself. Bifla shook his head again. "No, you do." "I do?" "Your blood." "What? What nonsense are you talking about?" Bifla didn't reply Evil God Loki's question. Instead, he stretched out his hand. Very quickly, Evil God Rocky sensed that something was wrong. Evil God Rocky felt that the flames that he absorbed were being sucked out once more. Not only was his flame power being extracted, but his blood was also being extracted. His blood was filled with divinity, divine power, and the power of flames. "Stop! What are you doing? You are offending a god, you are committing a grave sin." Evil God Rocky was anxious. But his words could not stop Bifla. Bifla was still extracting Evil God Loki's blood. "If you want a stronger method, I have one. To me, this is not a problem." "Stop!" Evil God Rocky shouted anxiously. "Bader, are you just going to watch? Are you just going to watch him kill your people?" Bader didn't have a good impression of Evil God Rocky at all. "Sorry, there is nothing I can do." What a joke. Facing the person who started the Battle of Dusk, it would be weird if Bader had a good impression of him. Not to mention that he was powerless to interfere. Even if he had the strength, he would just hit him when he was down. He wouldn't save him. Evil God Rocky became weaker and weaker. He wanted to struggle more and more. But Qin Zhao suppressed him firmly. Evil God Rocky kept changing his looks. "Let me go." The old lady form. "Please don't." The young lady form. Evil God Rocky had many faces, but it wasn't enough to shake everyone's attitude. Evil God Rocky was a huge threat as long as he was alive. If he didn't break free from Odin's seal, then no one would care about him at all. She was joking with him, just like before. But he asked for it. The first thing he did after breaking free was to find trouble with everyone. Evil God Rocky's body started to dry up. He was like a starving ghost that hadn't eaten for a few hundred years. In reality, he really hadn't eaten for a few hundred years. Finally, the last drop of blood was sucked dry by Bifla. In front of Bifla, a red blood ball with a hint of gold circled. But evil god Rocky wasn't totally dead. As one of the strongest gods in the Asgard god race, even if his blood was sucked dry, he still had a strong life force. Bifla, give me his body, Zhang Tianyi said. Bifla looked at Zhang Tianyi. What do you want to do? Refine medicine, refine god medicine. Zhang Tianyi looked at evil god Rocky's dry body and said, although you suck dry his blood, his body is still a precious ingredient. Evil god Rocky didn't expect that one day he would face such a bunch of evil people. Was he the evil god or were they the evil gods? Why did he feel like they were more evil than him? All of us want one, Qin Zhao said. The others nodded. Okay, Zhang Tianyi agreed decisively. Zhang Tianyi took out a scroll and drew a few strokes on it. Then, he slapped it at evil god Rocky. Evil god Rocky was sucked into the scroll. Bifla also put away all the blood. He had gained a lot. At least, he had a rare, satisfied smile on his face. We can leave now, right? Let's go. By the way, what's up with that small world of nothingness? Why did it absorb our power? Zhang Tianyi asked. That was a new small world. It doesn't belong to any of the 9 realms. It can be considered the 10th world. But that small world isn't perfect, and it can't produce spiritual energy. Instead, it will steal the power of living beings that enter and turn it into spiritual energy. Everyone exchanged glances. They were all shocked. Zhang Tianyi nodded. A new small world has a lot of research value. If we have a chance, we can go there again. Maybe we'll comprehend something different. But it's a little troublesome to enter that small world. The environment there counters us too much. Why aren't you affected? Zhang Tianyi looked at Balder and asked. Although you're fundamentally different from us, you also absorb spiritual energy, right? If I seal my energy sense in advance, I won't be affected by that small world. But I can't absorb spiritual energy either. I can only not consume it. Chapter 2997. Everyone was curious about the small world of nothingness. It was different from the first 2 small worlds. The 2 stations they'd passed at the beginning were worlds that had already been destroyed. Everything had been destroyed and obliterated. The small world of nothingness that Bader had schemed against and locked them up in was a new world. Because the laws of that world weren't complete yet, there was nothing there. But the 2 worlds were completely different. Many small worlds had been destroyed. But there were very, very few new worlds. It could even be said that it was worth more than a few divine artifacts put together. At least to Qin Zhao, Zhang Tianyi, and Bifla, they were priceless treasures. It was a path to explore the mysteries of the ascension state. In the past, on the path of cultivation, they had explored their own bodies to the extreme. Now, they didn't need to explore themselves, but the world. Nothing was more valuable than exploring a new world. Mary, the 23rd generation, went home first. She'd been invited by Zhang Tianyi's spell. Zhang Tianyi removed the spell and she went straight home. Convenient, efficient, and fast. It wasn't so convenient for Qin Zhao, Zhang Tianyi, and Bifla. They had to go back the way they'd come. It was the old way, stopping at each station. Alfheim. It's so beautiful. No matter how many times, it's still so mesmerizing. By the way, it shouldn't be a problem for us to take over this world, right? Zhang Tianyi asked. Is there a country in this world? No country, but I hope their lives won't change or be shaken. They're all kind elves who yearn for peace. They only have a social system formed by small tribes. If humans discover this world, it'll be a disaster for them. Qin Zhao glanced at Bader. In his eyes, Bader was a rather selfish person. He didn't expect him to have this side. When he talked about the races of Alfheim, his face was filled with gentleness. At least, it was much gentler than when he talked about the Asgardians. It was as if this was his home, and the races here were his family. Feeling Qin Zhao's gaze, Bader glanced at him. I'm the faith of all the races in Alfheim. I have the duty to protect them. Qin Zhao shrugged. Fine. He didn't want to be an invader and terminator for no reason. This world was indeed so beautiful that it was intoxicating. However, it was as fragile as a crystal ball. Don't say that you're here to play or just to find some treasures. As long as one entered this place, they would definitely come into contact with the races here. After a few times, there would eventually be conflicts. Some things were not because of anyone's subjective malice. It was more likely due to different habits and different standpoints. Although Bader's words seemed gentle, there was a hint of toughness in them. Half a day later, everyone finally returned to Earth. The familiar environment, the familiar air, and the familiar spirit Qi. Xiaohe, don't you have potato chips? It's outside. Go and move it. I don't want to move. Carrie shifted her bottom. You haven't cultivated for the past few days, have you? No. Anyway, that bastard isn't here. She picked up the bottle of cola next to her and took a sip. Life without that bastard is wonderful. I feel like every day is heaven. If he comes back, you're dead. I hope he never comes back. God, I pray to you that he dies somewhere. Amen. Crack. It was the sound of chips being chewed. Both Carrie and Xiaohe were stunned for a moment. Then they saw Qin Zhao walk in with a bag of chips. It tastes good, Qin Zhao said. Pooh, Carrie spat out all the cola in her mouth. Smiling, Qin Zhao looked at the terrified Xiaohe and Carrie. What did I just hear? You seem to be cursing a bastard. Tell me, who is this bastard? I'll kill him. As he trembled. Who gave you the courage to call me bastard behind my back? Qin Zhao roared. Xiaohe's and Carrie's little nest was shattered. Mr. Qin. Don't be angry. It's not good if the neighbors see, Xiaohe said carefully. It's fine. The neighbors have all moved away. You two are the only ones left in this community. Huh! From today onwards, you can get 100% training without going out. I'll bring your trial target here. Who's that? Get out here. Who? It's Hanwu, Qin Zhao said. Hanwu really wanted to hide in Carrie's body. Anyway, Qin Zhao was teaching Carrie a lesson, not him. But this time, Qin Zhao called him out. He couldn't pretend that he wasn't there. Boss, why did you call me? Qin Zhao flicked his finger. Instinctively, Hanwu opened his mouth. When it entered his mouth, his first reaction was that it was a soul fragment. But it was different from what he remembered. It was thicker and purer. It was a very small piece. It might only be the size of a finger. But it was very real. Usually, Carrie would catch some evil spirits for him. It was gone in one mouthful. It was mostly digested before it even entered his stomach. That feeling was like the beginning of drinking white wine. It was tasteless and not filling. But the soul fragment Qin Zhao had just given him was completely different. Even after it entered his stomach, he still felt full. It felt like military compressed biscuits. One piece filled him up and he could save money for a few days. Boss, is there more? Hanwu clearly wasn't full. If Carrie slacks off again, beat her to death, Qin Zhao said sinisterly. Got it. Boss, don't worry. Leave Carrie and Xiaohe to me too. Actually, Hanwu wasn't stupid. Qin Zhao had clearly been asked by someone to train Carrie. Qin Zhao's actions were already very obvious. Only Xiaohe and Carrie were confused. They thought that Qin Zhao was just messing with them. He enjoyed torturing them. But he didn't tell Carrie about this. Since Qin Zhao didn't want to, he obviously wouldn't. He was mainly afraid that Qin Zhao would beat him to death if he said too much. After all, it was true that Qin Zhao was training Carrie and Xiaohe. But he was also good at torturing people. Carrie opened her mouth, unable to speak for a long time. You're attached to me. Why are you helping an outsider? He bought you over with just one mouthful of food? Xiaohe was also upset. I'm just here. You guys can do whatever you want. It's none of my business. Plus, I haven't been slacking these days. Okay, you can move now. Move? What? Xiao He and Carrie were both dumbfounded. I've created a small supernatural space in this community and placed a few hundred evil spirits and monsters there. Every day, 1/20th of the evil spirits and monsters will be released. All you have to do is destroy all the evil spirits and monsters. Then, the barrier of the supernatural space will open, and you can leave this place. Chapter 2998. They would release 1/20th of the evil spirits and monsters every day. It didn't mean that they had to kill the same number of evil spirits and monsters every day. As long as they could survive the pursuit of the remaining monsters, it would be fine. Of course, if they couldn't kill 1/20th on the first day. Even if they managed to survive, they wouldn't be able to kill them on the second day. If they accumulated like this every day, the pressure they faced would gradually increase in the last few days. In the end, the situation would completely collapse. Of course, this wasn't the result Qin Zhao wanted. Qin Zhao's goal of modifying the community wasn't just to increase the difficulty. Instead, he wanted to limit the difficulty to their own level. They were both stuck at a small bottleneck. They needed more intense battle pressure to break through this bottleneck. After explaining the situation briefly, Qin Zhao left. He left Xiao He and Carrie behind, dumbfounded. Soon, they sensed an extremely evil aura appearing nearby. It wasn't that their senses were too outstanding. It was just that the aura was like a septic tank. It was trying to make its presence felt within a few kilometers. It was difficult for them to pretend to be ostriches. The two girls exchanged glances, both feeling helpless. Qin Zhao looked at them. He had left, but he didn't go far. At most, he would leave their sight. After all, it was Qin Zhao's first time creating this kind of training field. Its function was similar to the Tower of Trials that the handsome guy had given him. However, the effect was 10 billion light-years different. This was a reflection of Chen Yao's skill. It was also paired with the divine artifact he'd just gotten from Odin's treasury, the Mountain's Breath. The Mountain's Breath was a large energy gem. It was used to maintain the energy supply of this large training field. Without the Mountain's Breath, Qin Zhao really wouldn't have been able to create this training field. The evil spirits and monsters in the training field were actually quite ordinary. Under normal circumstances, they belonged to the category of things that were slightly stronger than ordinary people. If they stood in a row and didn't have to worry about spirit penetration, a Ferrari could crush them all. However, in this training field, they leveled up 3 times consecutively. The strongest ones were at the calamity level, almost half a step into the Shangqing state. However, the strongest ones would only be released in the last few days. After they were killed, they didn't really die. They just returned to the ground. After a few days of cooldown, they would reactivate the next time the training field was activated. Therefore, it could not be compared to the Tower of Trials at all. Every level of the Tower of Trials was a small world. There was no cooldown time for the monsters to respawn. Chen Zhao did not leave, partly because he was worried about Xiao He and Carrie's safety. Furthermore, he was worried about the trial grounds he had created himself. After all, it was his first time trying to make something like this. For this, Chen Zhao even bought the entire community. Secondly, he wasn't sure if Xiao He and Carrie were suitable for this training field. After all, the two of them were not professional testers. Fortunately, the two of them performed well. At least for now, their behavior was a bit out of his expectations. The first evil spirit that was released. It didn't take them much effort to solve the problem. At the same time, he also gave them a portion of dusk soil when dealing with the evil spirit. It was a low-grade alchemy material that was produced in large quantities worldwide, but it also had many uses. Many alchemy tools and potions could be made with dusk earth. Xiao He's face darkened as the two of them looked at the fallen soil. Does that guy think this is a game dungeon? Carrie. Yes, Qin Zhao had created this trial ground based on the concept of a game dungeon. Apart from the concept, Qin Zhao could also adjust the dungeon, the trial ground's values. It could go up or down 10 times. In fact, 10 times the difficulty didn't make much of a difference overall. For example, if the strongest evil spirit was half a step into Shangqing, it would still be half a step into Shangqing even if it was 10 times stronger. Qin Zhao waited until they dealt with all the awakened enemies on the first night before leaving. He had to admit that their improvement was quite obvious. Carrie looked like she'd been slacking off for a few days, but she was probably secretly training too. In the next few days, Qin Zhao arranged for someone to watch over them. This was to prevent unexpected situations from happening. He had to admit that fighting was the best way to improve one's strength. This wasn't just empty talk. Carrie and Xiaohe's strength improved very quickly. They'd broken through that small bottleneck long ago. And they'd broken through unknowingly. Then it was a smooth road. They improved by leaps and bounds. As a result, Qin Zhao had to secretly increase the difficulty a few days later. As non-professional testers, the two of them were actually to provide Qin Zhao with experimental data. "Hey, Qin, are you interested in participating in an auction?" Steven suddenly called him. "Yes, Qin." "What auction?" "It's an auction of my private collection," Steven said. "I plan to auction some of my collections." "Huh? Do you need money?" "If you do, I can lend you some," Qin Zhao said. With his relationship with Steven, as long as Steven asked, he could give him as much money as he wanted. Plus, with Steven's fame, he was definitely worthy of Qin Zhao's financial support. Perhaps he wouldn't return Qin Zhao with wealth. It might be a good investment. So, Qin Zhao didn't have to worry that Steven wouldn't be able to return the money. In fact, Qin Zhao hoped that he couldn't. "Indeed, I'm a bit short on money, but it's not a big problem. Plus, I have some collectibles that I can cash in." Most of the time, investing in art wasn't to make money, but to preserve their value. It was the same concept as investing in gold. But it was different. Gold was a hard currency and also a metal currency with a relatively stable value. Therefore, investing in gold was the kind where you wouldn't make much money, and you wouldn't lose much money either. Investing in art, on the other hand, was different. It was very likely that people would misjudge it. Moreover, the value of art aside, the market price of these things was also extremely unstable. It was also too easy to control. For example, if an artist's work was hoarded in large quantities, then every time they released a painting, the painting would be bought back at a high price. After a few times, the value of the artist's work would increase at an alarming rate. Art wasn't something that people understood. It was something that people interpreted. And the person who interpreted it was usually the one who benefited. Qin Zhao had always stayed away from this industry. Because he didn't know anything, he wouldn't bet his luck on something he didn't know. But Qin Zhao still decided to accept Steven's invitation. Regardless of whether he bought it or not, he would still have time to show off. Chapter 2999. "Gavich, why are you here?" Qin Zhao arrived at the auction. "Qin, I didn't expect you to be here too." Lila Gavich looked at Qin Zhao in surprise. "Don't tell me you're interested in something too?" Lila Gavich didn't feel good at all. Of course, he was here to buy something. Now, a suspected competitor had appeared. If it was another competitor, Lila Gavich would even want to make the competitor disappear. But Qin Zhao clearly wasn't the type that could be manipulated. Qin Zhao was richer and more powerful than him. Moreover, he owed Qin Zhao a huge favor. "No, Steven's my friend. He invited me here," Qin Zhao asked. "I'm here to sit down. Is there anything you need in this auction?" This?" Lila Gavich hesitated. "I promise I won't bid against you," Qin Zhao said, shrugging. "A divine artifact." Lowering his voice, Lila Gavich said, "I saw it in the auction brochure." "Chen, you really won't bid against me, right?" Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. What a joke. A mere divine artifact wasn't even worth a few $100 million. A while later, the auction began. Qin Zhao and Lila Gavich sat together. Because it wasn't time for Lila Gavich to bid yet, the two chatted in low voices. Steven was the sponsor of this auction. Half of the people present were his friends, family, or connections. Qin Zhao had seen a few of them at Stephen's private parties. Perhaps they had chatted for a while, or perhaps they had met once. In a public place like this, they would nod at each other when they saw someone familiar. Most of the items in this auction were within $1 million. 2 of them were unsold. The 2 that were unsold would probably end up in Stephen's hands. After the 8th item was auctioned off. Just then, the auctioneer announced the 9th item. The Scarlet Star was a 6-kilogram red crystal. The quality of this red crystal was outstanding. Under the purposeful lighting of the auction stage, it was dazzling. Even the tycoons present were attracted by the crimson star. It was too beautiful. Qin Zhao could clearly feel Lila Gavich's spirit rise. It seemed that this was his target. However, when Qin Zhao looked at the crimson star, he couldn't help but frown. That was because he had one in his possession. The starting price of the Star of Scarlet was $1 million. As soon as the auctioneer announced the price, Lila Gavik could not help but shout out a bid. 1 million! 1,050,000! $4 million! The crowd was in an uproar. They didn't expect a red crystal to fetch such a high price. According to the market price, they would definitely incur a huge loss. Generally, the price of jewelry collections in auctions would be closer to the actual price. For example, this large red crystal did not have any notable comments or biographies in history. Therefore, the price range of $1 million to $2 million was more in line with its actual price. But now, the price was raised to $4 million. This was obviously out of everyone's expectations. But what was even more shocking was yet to come. As the auction continued, the price soared to $10 million. Qin Zhao looked at the 4 people who were bidding against Lila Gavik. One of them was a beautiful woman in a red dress. The other 3 were all men, and they were all spiritualists. But Lila Gavik did not intend to give up. The other 4 did not give up either. When the price reached 20 million, one bidder backed out. Including Lila Gavik, the 4 bidders were all red in the face. Gavik, is this the divine artifact you want? Qin Zhao asked in a low voice. Yes, the Star of Scarlet. More accurately, it's Frigga's red star. Frigga is, I know, Odin's wife in Norse mythology, the Queen of Gods, Vanir, and the Queen of Magic. This Star of Scarlet is real, right? Qin Zhao asked. Of course. I've investigated it. It's real, Lila Gavik said with certainty. Is there a similar model? That's impossible. This is a divine artifact. Then do you think that the one being auctioned now is a fake? Qin, I've already contacted Mr. Stephen before the auction and had an expert appraise it. What's your target price? Qin Zhao asked in a low voice. Lila Gavik hesitated for a moment. $1 billion. But I don't have that much cash. If it really comes to that, I'm afraid you'll have to support me. But I don't think it'll go that high. I don't want to be in the headlines. I have one too. It's very similar to this one. I think the one you have is more likely to be a fake, Lila Gavik said with certainty. I just got that one. Maybe you should go find the person who gave it to you. Maybe you can get your money back. I didn't buy it. I got it from that man's collection room after I killed him. Fine. I think he's unlucky. Of course, you're unlucky too. He's a god, a real one. I didn't expect him to have a fake in his treasury. What? Lila Gavik cried out. Sir, please sit down. If you still want to bid, please bid. The current price is $31 million. Sorry. Lila Gavik sat down again, but he couldn't hide the shock on his face. Lila Gavik lowered his voice. Qin, are you telling the truth? The god I killed happens to be a god from Norse mythology, Qin Zhao said. Lila Gavik turned his head again to look at the scarlet star on the stage. Then he looked at Qin Zhao seriously. $200 million, Qin Zhao said. Lila Gavik nodded immediately. Sure, no problem. But I need to pay in installments. Installments at the bank's interest rate. No problem. Lila Gavik was even more excited. It had nothing to do with money. It was because Qin Zhao had given a definite answer. He was only 70 to 80% confident about the Scarlet Star on the stage. If he really bought it, he wouldn't even have time to cry. The Scarlet Star in Qin Zhao's hand was definitely real. After all, he'd killed a god from Norse mythology. Thus, the origin of the Scarlet Star in his hand was undoubtedly more convincing. Lila Gainik didn't bid anymore, but the auction for the Scarlet Star continued. The remaining three raised the price of the Star of Scarlet to $245. 5 million. Chapter 3000. It was a shocking price. The person who bid for the Star of Scarlet was the woman in the red gown. Lila Gavich was probably the only one who had a smile among the bidders. This auction was clearly out of everyone's expectations too. A ruby crystal was sold for more than $200 million. This had already set a new record. Currently, the highest price for a gem was less than $100 million. Of course, it wasn't that the most expensive gem was less than $100 million. The few that were more expensive couldn't be auctioned, such as the Star of Africa or the Mountain of Light. These gems were all worth at least $1 billion. But unless the Eagle royal family was destroyed, they wouldn't take them out. Nevertheless, a ruby crystal had set a new record for a gem. That was extremely incredible. Everyone knew that crystals were far less expensive than diamonds. But the Star of Scarlet had set a new record. People couldn't help but be shocked by the shocking price. Lila Gavich couldn't wait to go with Qin Zhao to get the Star of Scarlet. At home, Portia and Zephyr were cleaning the house. Little Larissa was sleeping. Lila Gavich followed Qin Zhao into the house. The moment they entered the living room, Lila Gavich exclaimed in surprise. "Qin, you're just putting it in the living room? It's pretty, isn't it? Now that I've sold it to you, I have to find a better replacement." Qin Zhao's tone was still reluctant. "A living room ornament worth $200 million. You're really extravagant," Lila Gavich said in annoyance. Indeed, if not for the $200 million, Qin Zhao really wouldn't be willing to change the ornament. After all, not every holy artifact was worth $200 million. First, there had to be someone with discerning eyes. Second, the person had $200 million. Third, the person had to be willing to spend $200 million. If someone was really willing to spend $100 million on every holy artifact, Qin Zhao wouldn't mind selling all of them. Beautiful, too beautiful. A perfect product. While Lila Gavich was amazed, he also couldn't bear to part with the Star of Scarlet. Portia looked at Lila Gavich, a rich man who had never seen the world, with disdain. "Zephyr, isn't this just an ornament? You can get one for a few $1,000s. Do you have to be so ridiculous?" Qin Zhao had placed it here half a month ago. They saw each other every day and didn't think much of it. Zephyr glanced at Portia. "If you had $200 million in your bedroom, I would have the same expression." You mean $200 million US? This crystal ornament?" Portia opened her mouth wide in disbelief. "Are you kidding me? I wipe this thing 3 times a day. You're telling me it's worth $200 million? If I accidentally break it one time, will I have to sell my body?" "Yes." Genevieve, who had entered before Portia, overheard the conversation. "Damn capitalists, even the decorations in the living room are worth $200 million. Portia's face was filled with envy and jealousy. His gaze wandered around the living room. Maybe there's $200 million worth of stuff in here. Perhaps his boss didn't care at all. Perhaps he would have a chance to sneak home. "Have you confirmed it?" Yes, it's true, this is true." "Of course. After all, his previous master was a true god. It's well worth the $200 million price tag. By the way, what's its use?" Lila Gavich hesitated for a moment before finally asking. "Do you know what Frigga is best at? Giving birth to a son?" Lila looked at Qin Zhao in disdain. "It's divination." "What's the use?" Qin Zhao didn't know how to do it, but many people he knew how to do some divination. There were many divination spells, such as Chinese divination, fortune-telling, physiognomy, and prime ministers. They were all divination spells. Western astrology was the same. Almost every religion and power had at least one divination spell. However, divination spells weren't really about predicting the future. At least, no one could accurately calculate what would happen in a certain month, a certain day, a certain minute, and a certain place a year later. Most divination spells were used in actual battles. They could predict what the opponent would do in the next moment, or the direction of the battle. Qin Zhao obviously knew that Lila had her own motives. However, he didn't understand what the value of the $200 million was. If it was just divination, as long as it wasn't the end of the world, he should be able to find some people. At least, those fortune-tellers definitely wouldn't need the $200 million. Simply put, fortune-tellers could predict the future, but the further it was, the more vague it would be. If it was a prediction of what would happen in a day, it could be accurate down to the time, minutes, and seconds of stepping on dog shit. If it was a day later, they could basically predict what would happen at that time. However, if it was a longer time, the effect would plummet. If it was a year later, they could only predict what major events would happen on that day. For example, things like birth, aging, sickness, and death were considered major. If it was something that would happen 10 years later, then it would only be a catastrophic event that could be predicted. If it was 100 years later, it would probably be the end of the world. If it was a certain event, the more influential it was, the easier it would be predicted. If it was a person, the more powerful the person, the more variables there would be and the harder it would be to predict. In the legends of our elven race, wait. You're the only elf messenger in centuries. You're a legend, right? I'm not a legend. Let's get back to business, Lila said seriously. Lila Gavich said seriously. According to the legend of the elves, there is an elven treasure. The elven treasure contains the secret of becoming an elven king. However, only the elven king can find the elven treasure. The elves no longer have an elven king, so the treasure was lost for thousands of years. In other words, it's a dead end, right? Without the elf king, I can't find the elf treasure, and without the elf treasure, I can't find the way to become the elf king? Yes, so I can only ask for help from outside and find the elf treasure through divination. Alright, good luck to you then. The elf treasure was the elf race's business. Judging from Lila's attitude, he probably didn't want outsiders to interfere. Qin Zhao was curious about what the elf treasure had. However, Qin Zhao still respected Lila Gage. Chapter 3001. By the way, the people who bid against you today seem to be spiritualists too. They're from my race, Lilich said. But they're from a different branch. They shouldn't be your enemies, right? Not the White Elves, Liligevich replied. Qin Zhao had some contact with the White Elves before, but they weren't close. After all, they were all active in the Los Angeles area. The White Elves knew who was in charge here. Thus, they still had a lot of conflicts with the Dark Elves led by Lilich. However, they were rather restrained and basically didn't make a big deal out of it. Even if someone died, it was their own matter. Very few people actually knew about it. In terms of personal relationships, Chen Zhao was biased towards Lilich. However, Qin Zhao had always remained neutral in the conflict between the two races. Lilich had never asked for Chen Zhao's help because he was at a disadvantage in a fight. Of course, the main reason was that he basically wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Between the two races, the Dark Elves were stronger. After all, there was Lilich, the elf messenger. The current leader of the White Elves was Undine. She was also Lilich's old lover. His two mixed-blood children were also the princes of the White Elves. Thus, no matter how much conflict there was between the two races, Lilich wouldn't kill them. Moreover, this society couldn't be like before, where people would fight to the death for every little thing. The conflict when they'd fought for the entrance to Amandadil's lair was already the biggest conflict between the two races in recent years. Okay, I wish you success. In the modern world, elves could basically be divided into White Elves and Dark Elves. However, it didn't mean that there were only two races. There were also a considerable number of races and branches. For example, gray elves, blood elves, and shadow elves were the more common branches of elves. There were also some rarer ones, such as snow elves and forest elves. Either the tribe lived in an inaccessible place, or the environment was harsh. Or they lived in seclusion in places that ordinary people couldn't reach, rarely or never coming into contact with humans. Their names basically represented some of their characteristics or habits. However, in this era, it was almost impossible to not enter the world at all. Even the elves were a proud race. Even though they still maintained their seclusion, they couldn't avoid choosing some spokespeople in human society. Chen Zhao watched the news on TV. At this moment, on Route 5, an unusual gunfight was taking place. Needless to say, the American news channels never lacked such exciting gunfights. But gradually, his smile froze. That was because, on the television screen, there were some lights that did not belong to firearms. Oh my God, what happened? What was that red light? Was it some sort of weapon developed by the military? Did you take a picture of everything? Maybe the director can replay the scene just now. It seems to be some kind of laser weapon. The reporter on the helicopter said in an exaggerated tone. Anyone who understood elemental magic would know that the red light was a death ray. It was a high-level skill, but it was quite practical. It was practically a necessary skill for fire elementalists. Just then, his phone rang. Guild leader, where are you right now? Is it convenient to turn on the TV? Or go to the official website of XXTV News Channel. There's a live news broadcast there. I'm at home and I'm watching the news you mentioned. Send someone over immediately to stop this farce. Also, arrest those who deserve to be arrested, and let those who deserve to die die. Also, let this news end here. Very soon the news stopped. The host in the broadcasting room said that there was a problem with the signal. Yes, it was West. He did not communicate with the TV station. Instead, he cut off their satellite signal. However, the car chase, the gunfight, and the magic battle continued. A woman in a red dress stood up from the sports car in front. Go see, don't be so impulsive. It's too dangerous. The driver was also a woman. In contrast to the woman in red who had stood up, she was dressed in black and had the same sexy aura. Ryan, those shadow bugs are too annoying, Gosi said coldly. I don't want to continue fighting with them. Don't go overboard. The helicopter in the sky should be from the TV station. Then I'll shoot them down first, Gosi said. Are you crazy? Do you want to expose the spiritual world? Do you want to be the enemy of the entire world? Maybe we're being watched by the entire world right now. Ryan shouted in terror. Fine. There's a tunnel ahead. Let's do it there. In the end, Gosi decided to compromise with reality. She had no choice. No matter how much she wanted to go against the world, she had to think about her blood elf tribe. Ryan stepped on the gas, and the car charged into the tunnel. The two cars chasing after them also charged into the tunnel. Ryan, leave with the Scarlet Star first. I'll stop them. Gosi suddenly jumped down from the sports car, her palms burning with heat. Molten fire! Gosi shouted. A few cracks suddenly appeared on the ground of the tunnel, and the ground was covered with lava. The two cars immediately sank into the cracks and were gradually swallowed by the lava. However, the people in the cars quickly escaped. The leader was a tall man in a black windbreaker. Gosi, hand it over. Delatour, can you afford it? I bought it for $245.5 million US. You won the auction, but that doesn't mean you have the Scarlet Star. The man in the windbreaker said coldly. That $200 million is just your tuition fee. You don't have the right to collect my tuition fee, including the shadow tribe behind you. Is that so? What if you add us? Suddenly, the lava on the ground began to rapidly cool down. At the same time, the air in the tunnel rapidly cooled down. A piercingly cold wind blew in from the entrance of the tunnel, carrying with it a few snowflakes. It should be noted that it was just past May. The cold wind and snowflakes in this season obviously weren't due to the weather. 5 women in white walked out of the snowflakes. Snow elves? They're not good partners, Gosi said mockingly. There's no need for you to sow discord between us. We're not partners, at least not after I get the Scarlet Star from you, the man in the windbreaker said. To put it bluntly, they were only working together temporarily. After Gosi, who represented the Blood Elves, was eliminated, it would be their turn to fight against the Snow Mountain Tribe. The Snow Mountain Tribe was half hidden, and the Shadow Tribe didn't have much influence in human society. They were much weaker than the Blood Elves, who had developed in human society for hundreds of years. That was why they had no choice but to temporarily team up to deal with the Blood Elves. Chapter 3002. Gosi was the strongest, but she wasn't sure she could suppress everyone. After all, she was alone, while the Dark Shadow and Snow Mountain clans had 12 people. It wasn't hard to run. No one could stop her if she wanted to. So her plan was to stall for time so that Rhine would have enough time to run away. The man in the trench coat and the Blood Elf didn't give the order to attack immediately. Gosi was famous for her strength among the elves. Very strong. How strong was she? It was similar to Zhang Tianyi's status in the spiritual world. Gosi was also known as the strongest among the elves. With her fiery temper, she had fought with almost every clan. Whenever she had a conflict with a clan, she would go around the clan's territory. Then she would leave unscathed. She had even visited the territories of the White and Dark Elves. She didn't go overboard. She just wanted to intimidate them. After a dozen times, her reputation was recognized by all the clans. Of course, there was her strength. But her title as the strongest among the elves wasn't real. After all, every clan had their own secrets. There were a few old fellows who couldn't be bothered with a little girl who wasn't even 50 years old. So as long as she didn't go overboard, the older generation wouldn't do anything to her. However, her strength was the real deal. She might not be able to catch up to the older generation. But among the elves of the same generation or the older generation, she was almost universally acknowledged as the #1 expert. Of course, the Dark Shadow and Snow Mountain clans had the advantage in numbers. They wouldn't lose if they really fought. More importantly, they all wanted each other to attack first so they could reap the benefits. That was why the situation was in a stalemate. But this situation wasn't destined to last long. The 3 forces could break the stalemate at any time. Suddenly, an abrupt voice was heard. Sorry for the interruption. Everyone looked over and saw a middle-aged man coming from the other end of the tunnel. I'm the manager of this area. My superior sent me here to check out the situation and treat you to coffee. Can you come with me? Scram. Gosi glanced at the newcomer. You're so pretty, but not cute at all. An elite looked helpless. You're making things difficult for me. I don't like to fight. An elite took out the dragon-toothed dagger and made a throwing motion. Be careful, my projection isn't very accurate. No one took an elite seriously. It was as if this uninvited guest was just air. Angelite's dragon-toothed dagger flew out of his hand. No one cared about Angelite's attack. Too weak, this kind of attack couldn't hit any of them. Whoosh, suddenly an elite disappeared. In that instant, Gosi's scalp went numb. A strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. The outer layer of the aura was broken through, the inner layer of the aura was broken through, then there was the magic shield around them. Gosi instinctively released a raging flame. Then, a blurry figure flew backward. It was too fast. The opponent instantly gave up on attacking Gosi. They turned to attack the Dark Shadow clan and the Snow Mountain clan. Ah, not good, it's a speed enhancer. Damn it, he's too fast. In an instant, the 8 elves of the Dark Shadow clan and the Snow Mountain clan fell to the ground. Angelit gently caught the dragon-toothed dagger that flew towards him. The elves of the remaining 3 parties were all numb. Terrifying. Maybe it was only a few seconds. In such a short time, he actually killed 8 elves in an instant. And the only one who reacted was Gosi. But Gosi knew that if there was no one else present, she would definitely be killed in an instant. Because it wasn't that this middle-aged man couldn't kill her in an instant. It was because he needed 2 or 3 seconds to break through her. If he tried to break through her in 2 or 3 seconds, then the others would inevitably take advantage of it. He made the best choice, gave up on her, and turned to attack the others. A spiritualist like Go-Si would usually release her aura out of habit. The main function of the outer aura was perception, and it had a certain defensive power. If the enemy was casting magic, it could slightly distort the trajectory of the magic, or slow down the speed of the magic. The inner aura, on the other hand, had higher defense and fast perception. Coupled with her own defensive magic, she could resist most attacks. It could be said that she could react to most attacks as soon as the magic came into contact with the outer and inner auras, so that she could make strategic feedback and decide whether to dodge, block, or counterattack. Even a speed enhancer could do the same. But this was talking about ordinary opponents. Unlike an elite, who was fast to the extreme. And an elite wasn't just scary in terms of speed. When Go-Si counterattacked just now, an elite made the decision to give up in an instant. This kind of decision that he made in an instant was what Go-Si was afraid of. The opponent's combat experience was too rich, and his combat awareness was too sharp. Also, his appearance as a middle-aged decadent man was too deceiving. When he appeared, no one, including Go-Si, realized how scary he was. The dagger that the opponent threw out. First, it gave the illusion of contempt. Although it could only be used once. Once, it had already played a decisive role. Do you need me to repeat myself? Can you give up resistance and cooperate with me? Go-Si smiled lightly. Okay. Oh? You accepted it so easily? I'm suddenly not used to it. An elite smiled awkwardly. This is the first time I've met someone who is so cooperative at work. First of all, you need to be able to catch me, said Go-Si with a smile. An elite frowned. Catch you? Didn't you see how fast I was? Go-Si smiled lightly, and his body suddenly turned into a ball of flames. Next, his physical body began to disappear. An elite felt his teeth aching. So troublesome. Forget it, you can leave. Against enemies who could elementalize, an elite was the most troublesome. Of course, it wasn't that he couldn't deal with them. But he needed time. He was more proficient in quick battles. If the opponent wanted to escape, he really didn't have much of a way. Then, sir, goodbye. I hope you have a good time with them. By the way, the guy in the trench coat will be hiding in the shadows. I hope you can take him seriously. The man in the trench coat's face darkened. You can run if you want, but you have to give me information. What is the meaning of this? Fine, you better leave quickly. After all, my companions are about to arrive. If you encounter the others, you probably won't be able to escape. Also, if you want to fight next time, you better find a remote place to do it. Try to avoid the sight of ordinary people. That way, we won't interfere. Chapter 3003. An elite hoped that the other party would escape this time. If they wanted to fight next time, they would at least find a more secluded place. That way, they wouldn't have to trouble him. After Go-Si left, an elite looked at the Dark Shadow clan and the Snow Mountain clan. Okay, let's get down to business. Which one of you wants to surrender? Delatour snorted and stepped forward. We surrender, an elite said. If you surrender with such an attitude, you'll be beaten up. Do you know that? Soon, Angelite's team arrived. His team included his son. They brought the suspects back to the headquarters. They wouldn't kill them. They hadn't done anything too irreversible. They hadn't hurt ordinary people either. But they couldn't avoid being locked up. According to the rules of the supernatural organization, they would be locked up for about 6 months to a year. But before that, they had to be interrogated. Name, race, gender, magic attribute, hobbies. West handed each of the suspects a form. You have 10 minutes to fill it out. The more answers you fill in, the more you'll be forgiven. Of course, it's not God who forgives you. It's our president. Soon they'd all filled out the forms. It was all basic information. They didn't have anything to hide. West took the completed form and went out. President, they're all done. Take a look. Qin Zhao took the forms. Yes. Then he walked into the interrogation room. Qin Zhao recognized him as soon as he entered. Delatour also recognized Qin Zhao. It's you? Delatour realized that Qin Zhao was the person who'd sat with Lila Gavich at the auction in the afternoon. Qin Zhao remembered Delatour because he was also one of the bidders for the Crimson Star. He'd also fought with the final bidder until the end. That was why Qin Zhao had such a deep impression of him. After all, there weren't many people who could raise the price to 240 million for a piece of rock. Even Qin Zhao couldn't do it. But Delatour did it. Even though he wasn't the final bidder. Don't tell me that you openly chased and fought on the road today just for that stupid crystal. That's a divine artifact, not a broken crystal. We also apologize to you for our actions. I hope you can forgive us, but we also have a mission that we must complete. This concerns our clan. I can pay the bail. We need our temporary freedom, and I guarantee that what happened today won't happen again. How much are you willing to pay? Qin Zhao asked, rubbing his chin. Qin Zhao basically knew what their goal was. Most of the questions were about the details. What they had done was neither big nor small. Therefore, it was understandable how he would deal with them. However, if they are really willing to pay the full bail, it wasn't like he couldn't let them go. Of course, they were not the courts. Therefore, it wasn't just bail money, but also ransom money. $10 million. Oh. Delatour said. I mean me and my dog Shadow Clan, a total of 7 people, $10 million bail. Rubbing his chin, Qin Zhao said. Before you pay the bail, I have something to tell you. Go ahead. The Star of Scarlet that you guys bid for at the auction is fake. Don't ask me how I know this. In any case, I just know. Now, do you still want to go out and fight those people for that fake Star of Scarlet? How is that possible? That's impossible. I found someone to verify it. It's real. Do you know what we're looking for? I'm done, Qin Zhao said. As for whether you believe me or not, I don't care. 10 million bail, and I promise that your battles and conflicts in the future won't happen in public and won't hurt ordinary people. Delatour lowered his head, his eyes flickering. Sir, the information you provided is worth 10 million. Of course, that's if it's real. Okay, after you pay, you can leave with your people. Remember what you said. Don't fight in public again. The next bail won't be just 10 million. Delatour had been thinking about something. Did Mr. Lila Gavich give up bidding for the Crimson Star because he listened to you? Before attending the auction, Delatour had actually investigated how many competitors there were. The Snow Mountain Clan, the Blood Elf Clan, and the local Dark Elf Clan. Among them, the Dark Elf Clan was the strongest. They were strong in all aspects, in every sense. If he wanted manpower, he had it. If he wanted money, he had it. It was said that their leader, Lila Gavich, was an elf messenger. An elf messenger that hadn't appeared in hundreds of years. Without a doubt, Lila Gavich was their biggest competitor. At least before the auction, they didn't have much hope in bidding. They were all prepared to fight for it after the auction. But to everyone's surprise, Lila Gavich gave up the bid halfway through. This obviously didn't match Lila Gavich's identity and his family background. The combined wealth of the Blood Elf Clan, Snow Mountain Clan, and Dark Shadow Clan probably couldn't compare to Lila Gavich alone. Secondly, as a local power, the Dark Elves were one of the 2 major elf clans. They also had a geographical advantage, so if Lila Gavich bid to the end today, the other elf clans would definitely unite. If he won, they would fight among themselves. If he didn't, they would continue to unite and snatch the Crimson Star from the Dark Elf Clan. Qin Zhao didn't answer Delatour's question. Since you know that the Crimson Star is fake, does that mean you know where the real Crimson Star is? Delatour looked at Qin Zhao. Sir, I'm willing to pay $50 million for this information. Qin Zhao glanced at Delatour. Who are you looking down on? Because of you, I wasted my rest time. After warning him, Chen Zhao turned to leave. If something like this happens again, I'll kill you all. De La Tour was actually a bit angry, but he didn't flip out on the spot. For one, this was Chen Zhao's territory. Also, Chen Zhao seemed to have some good information. De La Tour squinted at Chen Zhao's back. Should I find a chance to kidnap him? The supernatural organization was powerful. As the president, he shouldn't be weak either. I'm not confident. Perhaps I should contact someone else. Chapter 3004. Go see, you're finally back. Did you get rid of them? I was lucky. The local forces intervened, Gosi said with a smile. But that guy was really strong. If the Dark Shadow and Snow Mountain clans weren't there, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape. Gosi was still very afraid of Angelite's strength. Ryan, where is it? It's still in the trunk. Why did you put such an important thing in the trunk? Why take it down? It's big and heavy. If you didn't come back, I would have driven away. It'd be inconvenient to take it down. Fine. Ryan's words made sense. But Gosi still wanted to see the Star of Scarlet with her own eyes. Only by seeing the Star of Scarlet with her own eyes could she feel at ease. Ryan brought the Star of Scarlet in. Gosi took the Star of Scarlet and heaved a sigh of relief. It was dazzling and as red as blood. The Star of Scarlet felt an unprecedented sense of peace. There was also a trace of indescribable aura hidden within it. The owner of this aura was definitely very powerful. It was so powerful that it couldn't be any stronger. Gosi even didn't want to put it down after picking it up. Yes, this was the real Star of Scarlet. Gosi thought for a moment and tried to send a trace of magic power into it. She didn't dare to send too much. After all, she didn't know much about the Star of Scarlet. She was worried that if she sent too much magic power, it would cause an unknown situation. After sending magic power into the Star of Scarlet, a voice sounded in Gosi's mind. Child, you've awakened me. Gosi frowned. What kind of consciousness was hidden in this Star of Scarlet? Who are you? You can read my inner thoughts? Your magic power is connected to my soul. It's like you and I are face to face. It's not that I want to read your mind, but you're standing right in front of me. I can't not hear you even if I wanted to. You haven't answered my question. Who are you and why are you in the Star of Scarlet? First of all, I need to correct you. This is a container, or prison, not the Star of Scarlet. The soul in the Star of Scarlet said. Secondly, I don't want to tell you who I am. Gosi's expression changed. You mean, this isn't the Star of Scarlet? This is impossible. The materials used for this prison are the same as the Scarlet Star, made from star stones, but their effects are completely different. Then do you know where the Crimson Star is? I think I know. Then can you tell me where the Crimson Star is now? Sure. How can you tell me where the real Scarlet Star is so easily? Gosi couldn't believe her ears. She even suspected that the other party had other motives. There's no need to doubt my motives. I'm a sincere person and I can't lie. Of course, I have my own motives as well. Then what is your purpose? The Star of Scarlet is currently in someone's hands. I can't guarantee that he will give you the Star of Scarlet, but in exchange for your help, I can help you negotiate with him. What if we can't come to an agreement? Can you help me fight him? I can't. Why? Because I need to deal with the seal on my prison. Then what happens after the seal is removed? I still can't. I'm not good at fighting, even if the seal is removed. He's the bravest person, so I have no chance of winning against him. Then how can you ask him to help you remove the seal? Gosi thought that the person sealed in this red crystal was an extremely powerful being. But hearing the other party's reply, Gosi was disappointed. Of course, she still had her doubts about this soul. She couldn't just believe whatever the other party said. Moreover, the other party had already said that he was holding back. She couldn't be sure about the authenticity of the Star of Scarlet either. There was no doubt that the soul sealed here was very powerful. She could faintly sense the aura coming from the other party. Of course I can give him conditions. Although you say that you're a sincere person, how do I know that you're telling the truth? It sounded like he was blowing his own trumpet. Anyone could say it, and it had no binding power. It's not difficult to distinguish the authenticity of the Star of Scarlet if you know divination magic. I know a little, but I'm not very good at it. The greatest function of the Crimson Star is to transform the mana of a spiritualist and greatly increase the power of magic. The enhancement of prophecy magic is the most obvious. This is related to the characteristics of its previous owner, so you can give it a try. Use this crystal ball to test your prophecy magic, and see if it has been enhanced. How do I test it? Gosi asked again. What aspect of divination magic do you know? Increase the difficulty of your divination magic by 10 times. If you succeed, it means that the Crimson Star is real. If you fail, it's obvious that it's fake. Of course, if you're very proficient in divination magic, the difficulty of the divination can be increased by 100 times. Gosi was better at fighting, and her divination magic level was the same as Ryan's next words. After a moment of consideration, Gosi decided to test it according to the method that the soul sealed inside had mentioned. As expected, after a short test, Gosi found that her prediction had failed. There was no amplification. At this moment, Gosi's phone suddenly rang. When Gosi saw the caller ID, she couldn't help but frown. Delatour, did you escape? Gosi, do you want me to get some information? Are you interested? Not interested. Gosi was about to hang up. It's about the Star of Scarlet. Are you sure you're not interested? The Star of Scarlet is in my hands now. Do I need to be interested? If the one in your hands is real, then you really don't need to listen to what I have to say next. Oil. What do you mean? Literally. I got a piece of information. The Star of Scarlet in your hands is fake. As for the authenticity of this information, I have no way of knowing. You can verify it yourself. Wait. Where did you get this information from? Huh. Your tone seems a little strange. Shouldn't you deny what I said on the spot? Or have you already tested it? Or perhaps you found something suspicious? Tell me, what do you want? I got it from the president of the local supernatural organization. He's the one who captured us. I paid a ransom of $10 million to regain my freedom. This information is an extra gift, but I feel that he should know more. My people and I aren't sure. Oh. Chapter 3005. Is that person very strong? I don't know. I haven't fought him, but you've seen his subordinates. They're already so strong, so he should be strong. Gosi was undoubtedly a very good partner. Of course, the most outstanding thing about her was her strength. This is too risky. You can't even confirm the information he has, and you're planning to fight a strong person, and he's the boss of a local force. He's the only choice. Can you find a second source of information other than him? Or do you want to wait a few decades or centuries for the next news of the Star of Scarlet to appear? Gosi narrowed her eyes. She really did have a second clue. Now, the Star of Scarlet in her hands was basically confirmed to be fake. However, the soul in the Star of Scarlet had also provided a clue. A clue that led directly to the real Star of Scarlet. Now, what she needed to struggle with was whether to cooperate with the soul in the Star of Scarlet, or with Delartu. She needed to evaluate the gains and losses and the risks. Currently, the soul sealed in this fake Star of Scarlet was difficult to evaluate because there was too much unknown information. But it was precisely because of the unknown that Gosi felt it was dangerous. She couldn't even judge whether the information he provided was true or not. However, the conditions provided by this sealed soul made Gosi very tempted. As for Delartu, they were enemies. Although it wasn't to the point of death. But they both needed the Star of Scarlet. This in itself was an irreconcilable contradiction. Therefore, stabbing someone in the back was a common practice. Not to mention Delartu stabbing her. If there was a chance, she didn't mind stabbing Delartu. I'll think about it. Gosi finally decided to cooperate with the sealed soul. As for Delartu, she would leave him to the side. If this path didn't work, then she would work with Delartu again. Simply put, Delartu was currently a spare tire. After hanging up, Go-See reconnected with the sealed soul. What's your goal? To undo the seal. How do you undo the seal? Destroy this fake? My soul is fused with the crystal. If the crystal is destroyed, my soul will be torn apart. The only way to free me is to fill the crystal with magic power. Fill it with magic power? How much? You. Far from enough. Give me an accurate value or difference. Probably 10,000 of you. Obviously, Go-See did not believe the words of this soul. This broken crystal, and it's a fake one at that, yet it needs to be filled with 10,000 of my mana? In any case, he was considered an expert, and he had always been known for his mana capacity. What was the concept of 10,000 of himself? Even an entire supernatural region might not be able to amass 10,000 mana points of his level, right? Where are you going to find the person you're looking for? I can sense the location of the Scarlet Star. Oh. Are you sure the person you're looking for has the Star of Scarlet? And this person can undo your seal? Yes, I'm sure. I saw this scene thousands of years ago. What did you see? He obtained the image of the Crimson Star. Are you sure what you saw was real? Are you sure he still has it? Yes, he is very powerful. No one has been able to snatch the Crimson Star from him, so I am very sure that the Crimson Star is in his hands. All right, where is he now? That direction isn't very far. Ryan, get in the car. We're going somewhere. To where? You'll know when you get there. Drive. Ryan did not understand why Go-See was so impulsive. However, she was still very obedient, and was responsible for driving. Are you sure that person will help you undo the seal? I'm not sure. Then you can't be sure that he will satisfy my needs and give me the real Crimson Star? Yes. Also, can I ask, who exactly are you? Didn't I tell you? Perhaps you've heard of my name. I am the goddess of marriage, loyalty, kindness, and magic, Queen of Asgard, Frigga. What? You're... Go-See, are you talking to me? Ryan turned and asked. No, I'm not. I just suddenly remembered something. Forget it, keep driving. Look ahead. Thank you. Go-See suppressed the shock in her heart. God! Even if it was a sealed god, it was still shocking enough for her. Are you really a god? Queen Frigga from the Norse mythology? I've already told you the answer. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. Before the seal is undone, I can't prove what I said. Then the person who can undo the seal, the one we're looking for, is he also a god? No, he's a human, Frigga said. As long as he's human. Go-See heaved a sigh of relief. She had thought that he was also a god. After all, facing a human and facing a god were two completely different concepts. Go-See, don't get distracted. Ah? What's wrong? Are you sure we still want to go forward? Is there a problem? Go-See looked at the pitch-black road ahead. If I remember correctly, we're in the territory of the Dark Elves. Are you sure it's a good idea for us to barge in? Especially since we're still holding the Crimson Star. Are you sure we're not going to die? Dark Elves? Go-See frowned. Why were they in the territory of the Dark Elves? Was the real Crimson Star in the hands of the Dark Elves? This was not good news at all. Don't worry, let's go in, Frigga said. But... Go-See was still hesitant. To her, this was a tiger's den. I'm the god of magic. But you're sealed right now. I'm just asking you to meet him, not to fight here. Can't a simple invisibility solve the problem? Invisibility can't hide one's aura. A truly brilliant invisibility can't just hide one's aura. It can also deceive other people's senses. I can't do it. You don't have to do it. I can complete such a simple spell even if I'm sealed. You call this simple, oh. Do you have some kind of misunderstanding about simplicity? Or do you think too highly of us humans? Alright, let's go in. You've already cast an invisibility spell on me? Go-See suspected that she had been fooled. She didn't feel anything at all. And Rhine, who was beside her, was still there. If she had really cast an invisibility spell, she shouldn't have been able to see Rhine. Chapter 3006. Rhine was terrified of them walking into the Dark Elves' territory openly. She trembled, but it was just as Gossi said. The guards along the way really couldn't see them. As expected of the super geniuses of the Blood Elf clan, she could use invisibility magic to this extent. Gossi looked calm. In fact, she was panicking inside. Fortunately, Frigga's invisibility magic was powerful. Their journey was smooth. None of the Dark Elves noticed them. Goddess, are you sure it's okay for us to sneak in? Even if we want to see the person who can undo your seal, we should at least do it openly. If you don't display sufficient strength when you meet the other party, then you don't even have the qualifications to talk to the other party. The so-called request for an audience is only necessary after you know the other party and obtain the other party's approval, or you are the other party's subordinate. After all, Frigga had been a goddess for thousands of years. She knew how to show off. They could already see a luxurious manor in the distance. Gossi and Rhine silently entered the luxurious manor. I can feel it. The Crimson Star is here, very close. HM? Strange, that person's aura is a bit weak. Did we get the wrong person? No, maybe he's hiding his aura. He definitely has the power. Frigga had given a perfect explanation. HM? He found us, Frigga said. Get ready. He's here. After a dozen seconds, Gossi couldn't help but complain. Are you sure he found us? He's really slow. Just then, a short fat man with a cigar in his mouth walked out. Lila Gavich? Gossi refused to admit that this man was the powerful person Frigga had asked for help. However, the Crimson Star in Lila Gavich's hand caught Gossi's and Rhine's attention. Gossi, what's in his hand? Yes, it's the real Crimson Star. What? Wait, what's in your hand? It's fake, Gossi said. Lila Gavich was surprised. Aren't these two little guys from the Blood Elf clan? Is this how your elders taught you to be guests? Get out of here. He's not the one we're looking for, Frigga said. However, Goth had no intention of leaving. Instead, she stared at Lila Gavich. Or rather, he was staring at the Crimson Star in his hand. If he could obtain the real Star of Scarlet. In that case, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Lila Gage rubbed his chin. Huh! How did you know that the real Star of Scarlet was in my hands? Hee hee. Gossi stared at Lila Gavich. Looks like you're planning to fight me. Strange. Why do you think you can defeat me? Especially here. We'll only know after we fight. Gossi was very confident at the moment. Frigga had given her something. Something he couldn't touch in the past. It was a kind of magical knowledge that had long been lost. And some of her understanding of magic. This made Gossi even more powerful. It even allowed her to vaguely touch upon a certain supreme realm. Strength gave her confidence. She felt that even if Lila Gavich had the real Scarlet Star, he might not be as powerful as this impostor. I admire your courage and confidence, Lila Gage said with a smile. You don't just need admiration. Gossi attacked. Red and blue light bloomed from her body, intertwining and spinning as she shot at Lila Gage. Lila Gage raised his right hand and shot out the same red and blue light. The two lights collided. Lila Gage's was more powerful. The moment it bloomed, the remaining energy shot at Gossi. As expected of the leader of the Dark Elves, Gossi thought. However, the red and blue light suddenly stopped a few meters before Gossi. Then it disappeared. Lila Gage raised an eyebrow. Huh! It seemed that this young girl from the Blood Elf clan was more outstanding than he had imagined. In fact, Gossi was shocked herself. She didn't expect to be able to defeat Lila Gage in just an instant. She wasn't the one who dispelled Lila Gage's red and blue light. It was Frigga. Go, you're no match for him. The difference between you two is too great, Frigga reminded her. Can't I do it with you? If he didn't have the real Crimson Star, it would be possible, but the Crimson Star has increased the power of his magic by several times. Right now, I can only borrow your magic power. For example, I can't dispel the magic he used just now. Go-See wasn't willing to give up. Is he really not the one who can remove your seal? Yes, I prophesied thousands of years ago. I saw the future. He's not the one. But didn't you say that he has the Crimson Star? I don't understand why he has it either, but he's not the one. Is it possible that he took the Crimson Star from that person? Go-See felt that it was very possible. After all, the person wasn't weak. In fact, he was very strong. Of course, Go-See had this idea mainly because she felt that those who were stronger than her were already top experts. Since Lila Gage could defeat her so easily, he must be unfathomable. As for the divine weapons, whether they were real or fake, they should cancel each other out. Therefore, according to Go-See's calculations, she was slightly weaker than Lila Gage. Seems like the fake isn't an ordinary magic item. Leave it and you can go, Lila Gage said confidently. He had the real item and was clearly stronger than the other party. He couldn't think of a reason to lose. That depends on whether you have the ability or not. Go-See's mind raced as she tried to think of a way to escape from Lila Gage. At the same time, she cursed Frigga for being a scammer. This was completely different from the plan they had agreed on. Don't complain. It's my mistake. I'll take care of your current situation. Whoosh! Suddenly, a beam of light shone from the fake Crimson Star. A hole appeared behind Go-See. Go-See answered and disappeared into the hole. Ryan. Lila Gage. The next moment, Go-See appeared in the wilderness 100 kilometers away. Oh. Damn it, what did you do? I saved you, of course. Is there a problem? Of course it's not a problem, but where's my friend Ryan? Did you forget about her? I can't do anything about that. After all, my magic can only work on you. But you can think of a way to save her. Oh. Chapter 3007. Go-See felt that she had been scammed. He went with a solemn vow, and then fled in a sorry state. Okay, it wasn't a feeling. This was the truth. He was completely tricked by Frigga. He had clearly said that he would show off his strength. Then, the other party expressed his admiration and made a deal. Why didn't he complete the transaction and even lost a lackey? Ryan looked at Lila Gavik with watery eyes. Of course she knew Lila Gage. She also felt that she had been cheated. No, it wasn't a feeling. He wondered if begging for mercy would work. Lila Gavik looked at Ryan with malicious intent. You're thinking, does begging work? Ryan nodded silently. Wait a minute. That's not right. How did you know what I was thinking? You're wondering why I know what you're thinking? Ryan nodded silently. Wait a minute. No, how did you know what I was thinking? Hee hee. What a cute little girl. Tell me, why did you come here? Why did you come with that girl and leave you here? Lila Gavich looked at Ryan. Does she think that I've been alone for decades, so she's sending me warmth? Ryan shuddered, feeling that he was about to be violated in some way. All right, don't be afraid. Have you had dinner? Lila Gavich put his hand on RHY's shoulder. You're not planning to XXX me, are you? What the fuck, are kids nowadays so open-minded? I feel like I can't keep up. In the face of Lila Gavich, Ryan could do nothing but tremble. Forget it, it seems like you don't know anything. Have you eaten yet? Right now, Go-See was thinking about the current situation. She needed help. Otherwise, she wouldn't be a match for Lila Gavik. Not to mention that the other party had a divine artifact. Find Dela too? No, I can't let him know that the Star of Scarlet is in Lila Gavik's hands. But apart from Dela too, there didn't seem to be any good choice. Although the Shuashan clan wasn't considered weak, they didn't have any particularly outstanding people. As for Delatour, he wasn't weak. Moreover, many people from the Dark Shadow clan had come this time. Delatour himself was also very scheming. To Go-See, he had always been a huge threat. Goth thought of the supernatural organization. the most powerful force in the Los Angeles area. Go-See suddenly had a thought. Why would the president of the Supernatural Association send information about the Scarlet Star to Delator? That's right, it's because the Supernatural Organization and the Dark Elves are in the Los Angeles area. There must be a conflict of interest between them. Thus, he revealed this news in order to get Delator to cause trouble for the Dark Elven clan. In other words, the Supernatural Organization and the Dark Elves were enemies. This was a good piece of news. It would be best if they could cause a conflict between the Supernatural Organization and the Dark Elves. The Supernatural Organization definitely knew about the Dark Elves' power in L.A.O. However, they still controlled Los Angeles. This meant that the Supernatural Organization was definitely stronger than the Dark Elves. However, it was impossible for them to achieve a complete victory, so they had always tacitly acknowledged the existence of the Dark Elven clan. If the Supernatural Organization intervened, it was likely that both sides would suffer great losses, or even perish together. This was actually beneficial to her. But how was he going to cause a conflict between the Supernatural Organization and the Dark Elves? This was a very big problem. After pondering for a long time, Go-See suddenly thought of a solution. She would find Delator and have him attack the president of the Supernatural Organization. Of course, if she could kill the president, the Supernatural Organization and the Dark Elves would go to war. This was also the best situation. Only by fishing in troubled waters would she have a chance to save Ryan and even obtain the Crimson Star. Yes. That's right. Go-See had originally thought of letting Delator smash his head against the wall and bleed. Now it seemed that she had to get involved. Not for anything else, but to muddy the waters. Okay. She would do just that. Go-See immediately took out her phone. Delator, it's me. How is it? Have you thought it through? What's your plan? I've already found out who that person is. I even know where his house is. Are you going to break into his house? That's not a good idea. A spiritualist would definitely have set up a lot of defenses to protect the safety of his home. Also, the other party was the boss of an organization, so his strength was obvious. If they rashly broke into his territory and fought him, they wouldn't even know how they died. If that was Delator's only plan, then this cooperation could be terminated right now. Of course not. I'm not stupid, Delator said in a disdainful tone. Was this woman out of her mind? How could she ask such a childish question? What I mean is, do it on the path he has to take. Also, I happen to have something good that can come in handy when the time comes. What is it? As partners, you should at least show some sincerity. After hesitating for a while, Delator finally said, Magic Forbidding Field. Go-See gasped. Magic Forbidding Field. You wanted to use it against me? Yes. Delator didn't deny it anymore. It was the truth. Besides, it didn't matter whether he admitted it or not. Even if he said no, would Go-See really believe him? Where did it come from? Hee. This time, Delator didn't answer so readily. Go-See was even more cautious. Fortunately, Delator was using the magic forbidding field against the chairman of the Supernatural Organization. Otherwise, he would really fail miserably in an easy task without knowing it. Don't worry, it's just the magic forbidding field. That kind of thing is only useful against some weaklings. It's meaningless against the strong. What about me? Oh! I'm not a strong person. Although Go-See thought she was very strong, she really didn't dare to say that she could still release magic in the magic forbidding field. Don't you have me? Frigg said. The so-called magic forbidding field just seals off the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so it can't recover magic power or release magic. However, I can use your hand and magic power to release magic power. Can I do it myself? If you can learn what I've taught you today, you can. However, there's still a long way to go before you can truly be immune. What if the chairman of the Supernatural Organization is also immune to the magic forbidding field? There are only 1 or 2 such powerhouses in an era, and there might not even be one in an era. Some eras even have a gap of hundreds of years, so the chances of you meeting such an existence are very low. If you really meet such a powerhouse, there's no need to do anything. Just wait for death. Oh! Chapter 3008. Hearing Frigga's words, Go-See was relieved. Her luck had always been good. Besides, how could there be such a top expert in North America? Lila Gavich was almost at the top. Thus, she could be sure that the president of the supernatural organization wouldn't threaten them. At least not in the anti-magic field. That was good. Delatour definitely felt that she would also be restricted in the anti-magic field. Little did she know that with Frigga's help, she didn't have to be afraid of Delatour at all. Can you make this anti-magic field? Yes, but with you alone and without any tools, it's impossible to complete it. Is it difficult to make the anti-magic field? Your first priority now isn't to make the anti-magic field, right? Okay. There was no rush. The most important task now was to get the Crimson Star and save Rhine. After the Dark Shadow clan left the supernatural organization's headquarters, they began to investigate the supernatural organization. But in the beginning, they only investigated some trivial matters. And the information they had was all strange. The strange thing was that the supernatural organization in the intelligence seemed very weak. It was as if the supernatural organization that caught them and the supernatural organization in the intelligence were two completely different things. Soon they guessed right. This was a smokescreen deliberately released by the supernatural organization. Actually, this wasn't hard to guess at all. To be able to wipe out their entire team alone, it wasn't the boss. With this combat power, those who said that the supernatural organization was weak were all idiots. Thus, they had to be more careful when dealing with the president of the supernatural organization. Indeed, the president's subordinates could crush them in terms of combat power. However, not everything in this world was determined by one's combat prowess. For example, the anti-magic field was a very important factor. This time, he brought the anti-magic field out just in case. Delatour, are you sure our plan will work? Don't worry. The Blood Elf clan is more anxious than us, so she'll definitely take the bait. But no matter how stupid Go-See is, she knows the danger of the anti-magic field in our hands. Our cooperation is so risky for her. But she has no choice, Delatour said with a smile. Delatour smiled and said, and she doesn't know that our target is the fake Crimson Star in her hand. From the beginning to the end. De La too had long known that the Crimson Star at the auction was fake. Therefore, this cooperation did not exist from beginning to end. In the beginning, Delatour had planned to tell Go-See the truth if he couldn't snatch it by force. Then, he would pay a price to get the imposter from her. However, the plan was ruined by the supernatural organization. What surprised him even more was that the president of the supernatural organization had given him information about the real Scarlet Star. Therefore, Delatour wanted to use this information to lure Goth into the trap. If he could obtain the real Star of Scarlet along the way, that would be a pleasant surprise. Although their original goal was not the real Crimson Star. However, it was still a divine artifact. If they really had the chance to obtain it, they wouldn't mind. Therefore, they came up with a plan to kill two birds with one stone. He wanted to use information about the real Scarlet Star to lure Go-See into his trap. He had to kill both Go-See and the president of the supernatural organization and take away the fake Scarlet Star. Then, he would get information on the real Scarlet Star. Of course, they had a backup plan. If Go-See didn't take the bait, they would do it themselves. After obtaining information about the real Scarlet Star, they would get the real divine artifact and then make a deal with Go-See. No matter what, the initiative was in his hands. It had to be said that the supernatural organization and their president hid very well. If they hadn't known their identity beforehand, it wouldn't have been so easy to investigate his identity. However, after knowing his identity as the president of the supernatural organization, it would be much easier to investigate his identity as a normal person. Delatour, why do you think the leader wants us to take it back even though he knows it's fake? How would I know? Delatour rolled his eyes. He couldn't figure it out himself. However, there was no need to dwell on it now. Whether it was real or fake, he would bring it back. Those old guys would definitely go crazy with joy. Apart from showing his sincerity, de la Tour told Garcia about his trump card to increase her confidence. After all, they were all of the younger generation and definitely wouldn't be enough to deal with an expert. Without sufficient strength, it would be no different from courting death. Of course, if he told Garcia in advance, she would definitely be prepared. She would make some preparations for the anti-magic field. However, it was unlikely that she wouldn't come. After all, the Star of Scarlet was too important to the Blood Elves. "Stephen, you've earned a lot this time." At the moment, Qin Zhao was sunbathing and drinking red wine with Stephen and Rasfa. This time, Qin Zhao had helped them a little too. An item was already worth a few $100,000. Stephen's face was glowing. Even he didn't expect it. An unknown red crystal had actually been sold for $240 million. Even Rasfa was green with envy. He even wondered if Stephen had hired someone to buy it. However, he quickly dismissed the thought. As long as Stephen wasn't stupid, he wouldn't pay tens of millions of dollars in taxes for an empty title. "I want to auction my collection now," Rasfa said. "Oh." Rasfa said, "I'm not asking for much. As long as there's an item worth $100 million, that's enough. Chen, do you want to take some of my collection? The art market has been really popular these days because of Stephen's auction. Rich people collected art or antiques not because they loved art, but because they wanted to invest." As for Qin Zhao, he wasn't interested at all. Qin Zhao knew why the red crystal had been sold for such a high price. The art market without a foundation would cool down sooner or later. Unless a divine artifact would appear every few days. Otherwise, even the gods wouldn't be able to save the art market. "I think I'll pass," Qin Zhao said. "As for the two of you, I suggest you sell your collections while the market's hot." It was already a lottery win for a divine artifact to appear in Stephen's collection, and it was a fake one at that. The chances of winning twice in a row were too low. It could even be said to be impossible. Chapter 3009. While Qin Zhao was gathering with Stephen and Rasfa, Qin Zhao's phone rang. Glancing at the caller, Qin Zhao said to the two, "I'll take this. President, I have something to report to you." "What is it?" "Remember the elves you let go 2 nights ago?" "Yes." "What did they do now?" "They didn't cause any trouble. At least, they haven't caused any trouble yet." West paused and said, "It's just that those people bought a batch of wet demon star powder." "What is this thing used for? Is it the material for a large-scale killing spell?" "It's not used to kill. I heard from Ron Faxpen that this wet devil star powder is used to create a temporary anti-magic domain." "Oh. It's probably used to kill and rob people," Qin Zhao said casually. "Ignore them. As long as they don't cause any trouble, they can do whatever they want." Qin Zhao thought for a moment and added, "Our people have to be careful too. If they're using it for revenge, the anti-magic field is still a threat. If you find out that they're targeting us, contact me immediately. Don't do it like last time." "Got it, President." West didn't dare to think that he could do it anymore. Last time, a woman had almost wiped out the top fighting force of the supernatural organization. West finally understood where the supernatural organization's limits were. If Qin Zhao was here, the organization had no limits. They could easily destroy a 1,000-year-old family. But without Qin Zhao, the supernatural organization would at most be a second-rate force. So, West didn't bother anymore. It was enough to know the location. Now, the organization had money, manpower, and resources. It was just a matter of time. They didn't have enough resources. They needed enough time to turn resources into power. The supernatural organization's power was increasing very quickly. At least, it was faster than normal forces. Then arrange for a few foreign organizations and forces to have friendly exchanges. This was pretty much the future direction of the supernatural organization. Simply put, it was to grow wretchedly. As for the wet demon star powder that the shadow elves had bought, even if it was really used to deal with this supernatural organization, it wasn't a big threat. Of course, it shouldn't be that serious. It seemed that the shadow elves were quite smart. He didn't seem like someone who would do something stupid. Therefore, it was necessary to take precautions, but there was no need to be paranoid. Should I call the shadow elves and warn them? Forget it, I'll let them finish the fight quickly and get out of Los Angeles. He hoped that they would be more obedient this time and not cause the TV station to take action again. Qin Zhao hung up and returned to Stephen and Rasfa. Stephen, where exactly do you need money? If you really need money, Chun and I have a lot of cash. In fact, Rasfa was the same as Stephen. They were both billionaires, but their cash wasn't even enough for Qin Zhao's daily income. However, Rasfa could borrow money. Both private loans and banks were willing to lend him money. This was the advantage of a credit system. The rich would never lack money. There's no need for that. I was worried that it wouldn't be enough, so I was prepared to borrow some from you. However, after the ruby crystal was auctioned off for a sky-high price, I don't have to worry about that anymore. All right. Speaking of which, did you make any investments? Or to repay the loan? All right, stop asking. Stephen clearly didn't want to continue this topic, so he decisively interrupted the two of them. All right, call us anytime if you need help. Qin Zhao and Rasfa didn't plan on asking anymore. Because he had drunk, Stephen had Famtis drive Qin Zhao back. Of course, that bit of alcohol was like plain water to Qin Zhao. However, it was basic not to drive after drinking. Famtis, how's Evan recently? Famtis hesitated, as if thinking about something. I'm not sure if he's good or bad. What's wrong? Did something happen to him? He's been eating a bit too much recently, Famtis said. Also, he seems to be going through a second puberty. It's good to be able to eat. Second puberty is normal too. Felines have a certain chance of going through a second puberty. But if you're free, I hope you can come visit me. I didn't know that felines could go through a second puberty, but I'm sure that Evan's second puberty is abnormal. Are you sure? All right, I'll go visit when I'm free. Oh, where's that? Why is it so bright? Famtis pointed at the light on the road ahead. It wasn't her first time driving for Qin Zhao. She was very familiar with this road. However, she didn't remember such a strange road. Qin Zhao was also confused. Strange, he couldn't sense anything with his domain either. The moment the car entered the bright road, a fireball smashed toward them. Boom! Amidst the flames, Qin Zhao carried Famtis and left the wrecked sports car. What happened? Famtis's face was pale. After all, she was an experienced former mercenary. However, she'd felt death from the explosion just now. If Qin Zhao wasn't beside her, she really would have died. It's nothing. It's just a normal assassination. Qin Zhao shrugged. It's just a pity about my car. 2 sports cars were wrecked in less than 2 months. I bought the full-color series and now 3 of them have been wrecked. At this rate, the full-color series won't last past a year. Qin Zhao scratched his head. Do you think I should find a car manufacturer to customize an indestructible car, like Washington 1? Chen, is it a normal thing for you to be blasted into the sky in a car? Actually, it's not that many, Qin Zhao said helplessly. Including this time, it's 2 in total. And they're all concentrated in these 2 months. We don't have any weapons now. Are you sure it's okay? Oh! Famtis looked at the figures appearing on the 2 sides of the road. He was ready to fight at any time. Don't worry. No matter what happens, you'll be fine as long as you stand behind me. President of the supernatural organization, you look really confident. Delatour walked out of the darkness. Qin Zhao looked at Delatour and then at the shadow elves around him. Did you forget what I told you the day before yesterday? Or did my words cause you to misunderstand something? Just then, a beam of fire descended from the sky. Gosi descended with a red crystal. Gosi was about to speak when Frigg suddenly said, Escape. Oh! Chapter 30:10. Escape? Gosi had a feeling that Frigga would set her up again. Yes, this is the feeling. What do you mean? You're facing a monster. Run! Frigg repeated. He's the one I'm looking for. He's the one who can unlock my seal. Is that him? He doesn't look like anything special, Gosi said frankly. To her, Chen Zhao was just SOSO. He didn't even seem to be as good as Lila Gavich. Don't be so ignorant. You can't see it because the gap between the two of you is too big. In any case, don't make a move on him. Frigga noticed that there was something wrong with Gosi's gaze. To her despair, she found that she couldn't persuade Gosi. At this moment, Gosi's eyes were filled with eagerness. Instead of making her cower, Frigga's words ignited her fighting spirit. Perhaps, as Frigga had said, he was no match for him. But Gosi felt that Qin Zhao was currently in the anti-magic field. He might even have a chance to exchange a few blows with him. Qin Zhao also felt Gosi's gaze. In fact, it wasn't just Gosi who had such a look in her eyes. Everyone else had the same look in their eyes. Mr. President. De La Tu took a step forward with a smile on his face. Actually, I came here today mainly to ask you about the Crimson Star. I hope you can enlighten me. Is this the attitude of asking for advice? I don't see any sincerity from you. Mr. President, I mainly want to ensure that we can speak equally. I have no ill intentions. Chen Zhao laughed. Talk as equals? You seem to have misunderstood something. No matter what you've prepared, it doesn't mean that you're qualified to talk to me on equal terms. Sigh. De La Latour sighed. Sure enough, the strong are always so proud, so arrogant that it's annoying. In the end, we still need to fight before we can talk properly. Chen, do you need me to do something? Famtis asked in a low voice. She had seen what Chen Zhao was like when he fought. However, it seemed that these people were not ordinary people. For example, when Gosi appeared, it was clearly not the style that a normal person should have. She felt that Chen Zhao would be in big trouble. Famtis had no intention of backing down. Instead, he felt that Chen Zhao didn't just have to face a strong enemy. He even had to protect himself, a burden. She felt very apologetic. Therefore, he hoped that he could do something within his power. At the very least, he couldn't drag Chen Zhao down. Since these people came prepared, they would definitely not give up so easily. No need. They're just a bunch of ignorant brats. Chen Zhao shook his head. Humph! De La Tu was very unhappy with Chen Zhao's attitude. Do it! With Delatour's order, the 4 shadow elves surrounded Chen Zhao and cast spells at him. Each of the shadow elves emitted a black aura, and within this black aura were several evil spirits. The evil spirits flew to the shadow under Chen Zhao's feet and bit it. Famtis felt her scalp go numb. She had never seen anything like this before. A hint of surprise appeared in Goth's eyes. Why can they use magic? They should be in the anti-magic field too, right? They use a special spell to connect their auras together, making it seem like they're one person. As long as one person stands outside the anti-magic field, it's the same as everyone standing outside, so no one is affected. It's like one person standing at the edge of the anti-magic field. As long as their entire body isn't in the field, the anti-magic field won't work, Frigg said. As Frigg spoke, Gosi also looked outside. There were indeed a few shadow elves standing there. How big is this anti-magic field? About 30 meters. Goth understood and looked at Chen Zhao. The shadow elves use the Dark Shadow Tribe's natural talent, Dark Spirit. They can directly use the evil spirits raised in the shadows to kill enemies or control them. That person doesn't seem to be able to fight back at all. He's not as strong as you said. As soon as Goth finished speaking, there was a sudden explosion in the air. The 4 people surrounding Chen Zhao spat out blood without warning. The dozen shadow spirits that had been biting Chen Zhao's shadow were instantly crushed. Goth and De La Tu's expressions changed. Famtis looked shocked. Famtis didn't understand what had happened. In fact, Goth and De La Tu didn't understand either. What did you do? You can still use magic here? Huh? What did you do? Qin Zhao asked back. Why can't I use magic? Qin Zhao had thought that the guy had only limited his senses. But from the Latu's words, it seemed to be more than that. Seems like I've underestimated you. You can still use magic in the anti-magic field, but I just have to restrict most of your magic. Anti-magic field? Qin Zhao was speechless. If the Latu hadn't said it, Qin Zhao wouldn't have thought that he was in the anti-magic field. However, the Latu had used the anti-magic field to restrict his magic. He didn't seem to understand Qin Zhao at all. If Qin Zhao wanted to use the anti-magic field to restrict his magic, he would have to create an anti-magic field with a diameter of at least 10 kilometers. Also, Qin Zhao seemed to be a strengthening type. Using the anti-magic field to restrict him? This group of people must have lost their minds. As for the Latu's restriction of most of his magic, Qin Zhao only knew a few spells. Even if he was restricted, it was meaningless. Fine, game time ends here. Go see, do you want to come? If you don't, I'm going to attack. Go see hesitated and looked at Qin Zhao. Frigg stopped her again. Go see, don't die. You'll really die. Go see was a bit hesitant. Frigg's tone had been so serious both times. Was he really that powerful? How did he break free from the restraints? It wasn't magic. He didn't use any magic. Then how did he do it? He's a strengthening type. Strengthening type? Go-see almost laughed out loud. Frigg had been talking for a long time, warning and threatening Qin Zhao. In the end, Qin Zhao wasn't strengthening type. What was there to be cautious about? As long as he kept his distance, he was just a moving sandbag. Since you're not talking, I'll do it myself. The Latu walked up to Qin Zhao. Mr. President, I'll give you one last chance. Tell me now? Or wait until I beat you up before telling me about the Crimson Star. Pop! The Latu's scalp suddenly went numb. He subconsciously turned his body. Following that, a terrifying force brushed past him. Then he saw the road behind him turn into a field of pears. The hard concrete disappeared, replaced by broken pieces and gravel. Chapter 30:11. A small black ball hovered between Qin Zhao's fingers. You better dodge it. Otherwise, you'll probably shatter along with the ground behind you. Qin Zhao pointed and the black ball shot out. It was neither fast nor slow. Draddle's scalp tingled. Boom! Gravel flew everywhere. This time, the black ball landed at a more precise angle. It didn't plow the ground. Instead, it blew up the entire road. Not bad, Qin Zhao said casually. You can dodge my attack. How can you? How can you use magic? Go-See's expression also changed. The black ball that Qin Zhao created was terrifyingly powerful. It felt like a light touch would either kill or injure them. Draddle, let me help you. Pop! A small black ball left Qin Zhao's palm and shot out hundreds of times faster than before. The shadow elf exploded on the spot. Blood stained the companions beside him. From now on, anyone who gets close without my permission will explode on the spot. Draddle's expression changed drastically. Clearly, he'd realized that his plan was wrong. He was too stupid to want to kill two birds with one stone. If he'd known, he would have given up. His mission was to get the fake Crimson Star anyway. He'd actually been greedy enough to want the real Crimson Star too. In the end, he'd failed miserably. Go, I'll go! Draddle was very decisive. He definitely couldn't escape. He could only hope that some of his kind could escape. Damn! What's going on? Why is there a wall? The wall is shrinking. The shadow elves who were trying to escape suddenly realized that a wall had appeared outside the battlefield. It was an invisible wall. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't break through it. Moreover, the wall was slowly shrinking. They didn't give up and wanted to find the hole in the wall. They searched from one end to the other, even looking in the sky. They realized that they couldn't find it at all. You have to defeat me before the wall crushes you. I'm not joking. This time, people will really die, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. Draddle's expression changed. Mr. President, if I say this is a misunderstanding, will you believe me? I will. Chen Zhao nodded. Delatour's face lit up, but then Chen Zhao said, But I don't accept it. Gosi saw that the situation wasn't right. She didn't give up on testing Chen Zhao. You won't stop me this time, right? After all, if I don't resist, I'll be dead for sure. It's useless. It's impossible for you to defeat him. As long as one is human, there will always be a weakness. No matter how strong he is, there will still be a limit. Frigga sighed. You're talking about normal people. At that moment, the red crystal in Gosi's hand suddenly emitted light. Within the light, a beautiful and dignified figure appeared in front of everyone. This figure was full of radiance and holiness. She was obviously beautiful beyond compare, but no one could ever have the heart to profane her. Another god. Oh! Chen Zhao looked at Frigga, who had revealed her true form. He could tell that Frigga was not in a normal state. Chen Zhao's words shocked Formutus, Derlatour, and the others. God? Was this figure God? You should hide well instead of appearing in front of me now. Honorable human expert, I was the one who guided her to you, Frigga said. Find me? For what? Let me introduce myself. I'm Queen Frigga of Asgard. Chen Zhao frowned. You're here for revenge? Everyone was confused. Revenge? Why would Frigga want to find this man for revenge? Although you killed Odin and destroyed Asgard, it has nothing to do with me, Frigga said calmly. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. They wondered if they'd heard wrong. Or was Frigga wrong? What had this man done? Kill Odin? Destroy Asgard? Goddess, are you sure you're not joking with us? You're the queen of Asgard, Odin's wife. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you? If something like this happened to Chen Zhao, he definitely wouldn't let it go. It would be a fight to the death. Asgard should have been destroyed 3,000 years ago. The gods shouldn't exist in the world, Frigga said calmly. 3,000 years ago, I tried to persuade Odin, but he didn't want to. He insisted on using his own method, so I divined for him one last time. I saw Asgard, the gods, and Odin's tragic ending. He didn't accept the tragic fate, so he asked me to continue divining and tried to change it. I divined again, and it was an even more tragic fate. I repeated it 6 times, but Odin still didn't accept it. On the 7th time, I saw you destroy Asgard and tear the gods' souls into pieces. Odin's soul was devoured by you. I told Odin the result of the divination, but he didn't accept it. He wanted to change his fate, but I rejected him because the more he tried to change his fate, the more tragic it would be. Angered, Odin sealed me. Chen Zhao was like a bystander, quietly listening to Frigga's narration. But everyone else was scared out of their wits. They felt that Frigga was telling a fantasy story. There was such a person who destroyed Asgard in Norse mythology and destroyed the gods? Fine. Even if you're not here for revenge, why are you here? I don't like you Asgardian gods. I'm here to beg you to undo the seal, Frigga said. Frigg said, This is a seal that Odin placed on me. Only the god slayer, which is you, can open this seal. I don't plan on destroying you for now, but that doesn't mean I'll undo the seal for you. You're thinking too much. No, you will. No, I'm sure I won't. You have 2 daughters, right? Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. He didn't believe that Frigga would be so stupid as to threaten him with her own daughter. I'm the god of magic, the most outstanding magician in the world. I can be your daughter's teacher. Thank you, but I don't need it. Regardless of whether Frigga wanted revenge or not, Chen Zhao couldn't hand his daughter over to her. What a joke. Oh. He'd killed her entire family. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they couldn't live under the same sky. Asking her to be his daughter's teacher? Chen Zhao would be crazy to agree. Your eldest daughter is the witch of destruction. Apart from me, no one in the world can teach her. If no one can teach her, I'd rather not let her touch magic. If the Witch of Destruction can't extinguish other lives, then she can only extinguish herself, Frigga said. Chen Zhao's expression changed involuntarily. Frigg continued, In my prophecy, I saw two scenes. One is that she becomes my student, and the other is that she doesn't. Do you want to see the two scenes? I can send you what I see. Oh. Chapter 30:12. Everyone's senses were very poor. Frigga's story was like a myth. But the person in question was right before them. And the person in question was their target. Especially Draddle. What had he done? He'd planned to use these 8 or 9 people to plot against the God Slayer. A terminator of the God race. How could he have such a stupid idea? How about it? Tell me your decision. Do you accept this deal? I can, but I have to be present every time you come into contact with my daughter. Qin Zhao waved his hand. The red crystal in Go Si's hand fell into his hands uncontrollably. Go Si refused, but she couldn't do anything against Qin Zhao. They weren't his match at all. They would never be. How do I undo the seal? Just pour your magic power in. Fill this red crystal up. Qin Zhao didn't think too much. He poured his magic power directly into the red crystal. At that moment, everyone felt the flood-like magic power in Qin Zhao's body. The people who'd been skeptical about Frigga's story finally understood. Now, they finally understood the difference between them and Qin Zhao. 10 times? 100 times? Or 1,000 times? This indescribably vast magic power made them feel even more hopeless. The comparison was very direct, but not direct enough. They could feel Qin Zhao's magic power. It was indeed very vast. But because it exceeded the limits of their senses, they couldn't fully sense the difference. This was what made them feel the most hopeless. If it was just limited strength, they could still think about fighting. But this almost infinite difference was something they didn't even know how to catch up. Go Si was moved too. Back then, Frigga had told her. Qin Zhao needed 10,000 times more magic power than her to undo the seal. Go Si had been exaggerating. But now, she finally understood that Frigga wasn't joking. Moreover, 10,000 times was far from enough. Because Qin Zhao was pouring out magic power thousands of times more than Go Si's every second. And it was continuous. A few thousand times in 1 second. 10 seconds would be tens of thousands of times. Go Si felt like she had a wrong idea about magic power. Her magic power couldn't even be called magic power. All her magic power wasn't even 1,000th of what Qin Zhao released in 1 second. It lasted for about 3 minutes. The light on the red crystal suddenly dimmed. Qin Zhao let go of it. The red crystal floated in the air. There would be a small flicker every second. Everyone held their breath and stared at the red crystal with their eyes wide open. They knew that they were about to witness the reappearance of a god from a fairy tale. Phantus widened his eyes as well. She had never thought that one day she would witness a legend. The air was filled with a mysterious aura. Qin Zhao looked at the red crystal in surprise. The others also felt it. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, understood. It was like a masterpiece that was handed down from generation to generation. Others could only see the title and the introduction. Then, from the book's title and introduction, he could see how magnificent and epic the book was. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, could directly read this classic. He could understand and comprehend more directly. Of course, Qin Zhao's understanding was limited. After all, compared to classic novels, he preferred erotic novels. In short, Qin Zhao's foundation was weak. Moreover, the college entrance examination also took the path of sports students. It was destined that he wouldn't be able to gain much from this kind of comprehension. At this moment, with the red crystal as the center, leaf-like nerves began to extend around it. Then, the nerves started to be covered by a layer of flesh and blood. Then, another layer of skin covered the flesh and blood. It was like the process of a life being born. Qin Zhao couldn't see it clearly. But he could feel that Frigga wasn't weaker than Odin. At least compared to Odin, who had lost his body. Frigga was very strong. Of course, her strength wasn't just in combat ability. Combat ability was something that could only be known through actual combat. But what Frigga had demonstrated was profound arcane magic. It was the sublimation of magic after reaching the extreme. It was like how 1 + 1 was 1 + 1 in the eyes of ordinary people. But in the eyes of mathematicians, 1 + 1 was far more complicated than what ordinary people knew. Soon, a graceful figure appeared in front of everyone. But this figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. Soon, it was covered by a white veil. Frigga finally appeared in the world again. She was different from the figure that had appeared through the seal. Now, Frigga was more realistic but also more dreamy. She was too beautiful. It seemed that all the words that could describe beauty could be used to describe her. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were faint golden. Her hair was curled up, and her figure was slender. Everyone was lost in Frigga's beauty. Even women couldn't resist Frigga's beauty. But only Qin Zhao looked at Frigga more directly. Everything was great. The only thing she didn't have was female characteristics. Of course, it wasn't that Frigga didn't have female characteristics. It was that her divinity covered up her female feelings. People could only notice her divinity, but they couldn't feel her gender. For example, the word sexy. Most people couldn't have any urges toward Frigga. Of course, not everyone could be as rational and objective as Qin Zhao when facing Frigg. Frigga looked at Qin Zhao, and Qin Zhao looked back at her. Both sides were scrutinizing each other. I finally understand Odin's persistence. You're his best choice, but he made a wrong choice. He's stubborn and domineering as usual. This also destroyed him. There was a hidden meaning in Frigga's words. Since she could predict the twilight of the gods, she could guess why Odin had chosen Qin Zhao. Even though she hadn't participated and had been watching the twilight of the gods from the perspective of a bystander. Qin Zhao shrugged and said casually, "At least his stubbornness prevented you from being destroyed with him." Qin Zhao really didn't think that Odin had sealed Frigga to make her shut up. Someone as smart as Frigga had obviously guessed this possibility. She didn't deny it. "Sir, can you fulfill a small wish of mine?" Frigga looked at Qin Zhao and lowered her posture, seeming sincere. "A request from a god, no matter how small, isn't normal. I promised that elf girl that I'd help her find the Star of Scarlet, which is my magic item. I've given the Star of Scarlet to someone else," Qin Zhao said calmly. Qin Zhao had said that because she was his friend. If they dared to snatch it, they had to think about whether they could afford to offend her. Chapter 30:13. Frigg looked at Go-Si helplessly. Go-Si was in despair. This meant that Lila Gavich wasn't Qin Zhao's enemy. Instead, he was Qin Zhao's friend. This made sense. After all, so what if Lila Gavich was strong? Could he be stronger than this god slayer? Without Qin Zhao's permission, Lila Gavich and his Dark Elf clan wouldn't be able to stay in Los Angeles. But Lila Gavich had Qin Zhao's protection. This meant that she wouldn't have a chance to steal the Crimson Star from Lila Gavich. Of course, this was the truth. It didn't matter if Qin Zhao existed or not. Lila Gavich's individual power and Dark Elf power. Plus, he had an absolute geographical advantage. Both Go-Si and the Blood Elf clan couldn't compare to him. "Sir, Go-Si and your friend have some misunderstanding. What if her people is a guest at your friend's house? Can you let her come back?" Frigg asked. "Yes, as long as she's alive." After getting the information, Qin Zhao called Lila Gavich directly. "Gavich, I heard you captured a girl from the Blood Elf clan?" "Yes." "How did you know?" "I made a deal with someone." "Give her to me." "Sure." Lila Gavich was straightforward. He didn't have any use for Ryan anyway. Unless he wanted to turn Ryan into an barbecue. Ryan was basically a single-celled organism. She was ridiculously bold. After getting used to being a captive, she accepted her current situation. In the next 2 days, she ate and slept as usual. No one came to save her. Lila Gavich didn't know what to do with Ryan either. Ryan didn't refuse to ask for information from her mouth. In the time it took to finish a meal, Lila Gavich had asked all the questions he needed. He didn't go so far as to completely eradicate her. Dark elves and blood elves weren't allies. But it wasn't to the point of fighting to the death. At most, they didn't like each other. Because they didn't have any conflicts of interest, there weren't any conflicts. Except this time, when two juniors jumped in front of him. He wouldn't kill them for such a small matter. Moreover, he still had a certain degree of tolerance towards his own kind. As long as it wasn't a large-scale conflict, he wouldn't kill anyone if he could. Another example was the White Elves, who were also in Los Angeles. Now that the Dark Elves were powerful, they didn't kill the White Elves. Aside from the fact that Undine, the leader of the White Elves, was his old lover, there was still some affection between them. Now that someone had claimed Ryan, it couldn't be better. Just then, Gosi suddenly knelt before him. "Sir, please help me. Lend me the Star of Scarlet." Chen Zhao glanced at Gosi. "I didn't kill you because of Lady Frigg, but that doesn't mean I'll help you. Plus, Lady Frigg is an ancient and powerful god. If you have any problems, you can ask her for help instead of me." In the real world, when one had enough money, there was nothing that money couldn't solve. It was the same in the spirit world. When one's power reached a certain level, there was nothing that couldn't be resolved with power. If there were more, it could only mean that he was not strong enough. For example, Lila Gavich obtained the Scarlet Star and wanted to find a way to become the Elven King. Actually, his ultimate goal was to become stronger. If he had Chen Zhao's power, it wouldn't matter whether he became the Elven King or not. Gosi glanced at Frigg, who shook her head. "I know that your clan is facing a problem, but I can't do it." "Oh. Lady Frigg, I'm really curious. What problem does her clan have that even you can't solve?" "Their clan's bloodline is about to run out." "What do you mean? Are you saying that their bloodline is going to end?" "No, the newborn child will lose the characteristics of the clan bloodline. Do you understand? Lose the characteristics of the bloodline? Do you mean their newborns will become ordinary people?" "No, they'll still be elves, but elves without characteristics. This means that blood elves won't exist in the future." "Why is that?" "The reason why there are so many elven clans is because of their ancestors. Some elven powerhouses passed on their magic or power to their descendants, and according to this bloodline inheritance, the elven clans were divided. However, this inheritance will disappear one day. No power can be passed on forever. One day, the bloodline inheritance will completely disappear, and the glory of the past will also come to an end. In other words, this isn't a natural disaster. It's the law of nature, a natural process of extinction? And it's not fatal? You could say that, but the Blood Elf clan, or anyone else, wouldn't be able to calmly accept such a situation. That's why the necessary resistance still exists. For example, the current Blood Elf clan is naturally unwilling to see their clan disappear, so they're trying to find the Crimson Star and have the most talented clansmen become powerhouses. Through this powerhouse, they can reawaken the bloodline of the clan and continue the future of the Blood Elf clan. In other words, you just have to become strong enough, right? Is that difficult?" No one wanted to answer Qin Zhao. All they wanted to do was give him a look. Not for anything else, but for this super annoying sentence. Everyone wanted to become strong, but could it be done just because they wanted to? Frigga glanced at Qin Zhao. "You're standing too high. You can't see the world under your feet." "I can stand so high because I have enough resources under my feet, so isn't it natural to be strong?" Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. "Plus, both you and I have the ability to make people strong quickly. Don't tell me you can't do it. You're the Queen of Asgard. I don't believe you can't do what I can." "What's the price?" "She can't afford it," Frigga said. "We can make a normal person strong overnight, but they have to pay a corresponding price. It's different with the Scarlet Star. It's the result of their hard work. No, if it's really possible, I can pay the price. I'm not afraid of any price." Frigga shook her head. No, you don't understand. For example, let's make an agreement. I'll give you great power, but you and your clan will suffer an eternal curse. Are you sure you want this price? Chapter 30:14. Gosi looked at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao shrugged. Do you have money? If I want to reach my goal, how much do I need? I'll give you a discount. $10 billion, Qin Zhao said calmly. Gosi almost spat out blood. $10 billion? Even if she sold the entire Blood Elf clan, she wouldn't be able to gather that much money. Plus, the money she'd spent at the auction was almost the entire village's hope. Now, almost everyone in the Blood Elf clan's village was a vegetarian. If she gathered another $10 billion, the entire village would probably have to sell their kidneys. That was considered cheap. With Qin Zhao's current resources, he could build 2 or 3 more Shangqing realms. But the price was too high. Without enough returns, Qin Zhao wouldn't invest. Moreover, using resources to build a Shangqing realm expert was far less worthwhile than investing in 10 people with top talent. If one of the 10 broke through, it wouldn't be a loss. If 2 broke through, it would be a huge profit. Also, the resources invested wouldn't be as exaggerated as pushing one person to Shangqing realm. Just like Dragon Tiger Mountain and the Scarlet Church, would they not have resources? Of course they did. Compared to Qin Zhao's current resources, they had a lot more. It was more than enough for 3 or 4 people. But they didn't do that. It was because the investment wasn't proportional to the returns. Moreover, people who forced their way to Shangqing realm were at the bottom of Shangqing realm. They had no room for growth. Under normal circumstances, no organization would use resources to build a Shangqing realm expert. Gosi wasn't related to him, so he couldn't put resources on her. $10 billion? In that case, Qin Zhao was really lucky. I can! The Dark Shadow clan can! Delatour shouted. By now, the invisible barrier had shrunk to less than 30 meters in diameter. Qin Zhao glanced at Delatour and the other Dark Shadow clan members. I almost forgot about the small fries. A few black balls appeared in Qin Zhao's hand. Pop, pop, instantly, all the Dark Shadow clan elves ate one. None of them survived, including Delatour. Gosi was shocked by Qin Zhao's ruthlessness again. Famtis was also a little shocked. She'd been a mercenary in the past. But she'd never seen someone like Qin Zhao, who killed a few people casually. It was obvious that those people had decided to surrender. No, they should have already surrendered. However, Qin Zhao didn't accept it. Draddle was also courting death. If he didn't say anything, Qin Zhao wouldn't even bother. He heard De La Tu say that the Shadow Clan could fork out $10 billion. Then he was definitely a great enemy. He had to kill him first. As for 10 billion USD? Qin Zhao felt that Delatour was really thinking too much. They were enemies first, strangers second. What made him think that he would create an enemy for $10 billion? That was why he said he was stupid. All right, Madam Frigg, I've fulfilled my promise. Now it's your turn. I hope you won't suddenly disappear. After all, you definitely didn't come out of the seal to hide, right? I'll be there as promised. Frigg nodded and left with the dejected Gosi. Goddess, what should I do? Gosi looked at Frigg with a somewhat pessimistic gaze. I should thank you for being able to escape. To be honest, if I use my ability, it's not difficult to forcefully raise you to god level. But like I said before, the price is something you can't afford. Or, as that man said, use his resources to forcefully raise you to god level. The price you pay is human currency. But just like his price, you can't afford it either. Is there no way to trade with him? Use something else instead. Frigg glanced at Gosi. Then tell me, what can you give him to trade with? If it's an ordinary divine artifact, it's best that you give up on this idea. He has completely plundered Odin's collection, and I'm afraid there are no less than 100 divine artifacts. So, if there's nothing special about it, he won't be able to use it. Gosi felt even more despair. Even robbing a bank wouldn't be able to get that much money. $10 billion was definitely a despairing number. So there's no way at all? There's another way. What is it? In this world, there are only a few ways to become a God-level expert. Relying on one's talent to break through is undoubtedly the most powerful method, as well as the one with the most potential. The few top-notch humans in this world, including that person, all relied on their talent to break through their limits. Therefore, they are the strongest among humans, even stronger than gods. Frigg glanced at Go-See. You have this talent, but you need time to fulfill it. Moreover, success or failure isn't absolute. The second method is the simplest. Using a tremendous amount of resources is also the method that man can provide. However, it's the most impossible for you to achieve, and this method will also cut off your future. The third method is the magic that I can provide to forcefully help you break through the barriers, allowing you to obtain God-level power. However, the corresponding price is also very severe. Not only you, but your family, people, and even your descendants will have to bear this price. Other than these three methods, there's a fourth method. Go-See didn't interrupt and listened to Frigg's explanation. The fourth method is a secret method, or rather, a forbidden technique. In this world, there are some forbidden techniques that can break the rules. They're either cruel, complicated, or extremely risky. They can even turn you into something else, distorting your body and mind. Goddess, do you know any secret methods? Yes, but I really don't want you to choose one. I carry the hope of the Blood Elf clan. This is hope for you, but it might also be despair. I don't have a choice either. Don't be so hasty to make a decision. You can think about it for a few more days. No, I've already decided. Frigg thought about it. Next time I go to meet that person, come with me. Why do you still want to meet him? Go-See was still very resentful. Out of all the secret methods, I thought of one that's suitable for you, but you need his help. If he's willing to help, your success rate will increase by at least 50%. What if I don't have his help? Infinitely close to zero. Go-See couldn't help but feel unwilling. She couldn't seem to get around that person. She was really unwilling and helpless. Chapter 30:15. The next day, Qin Zhao welcomed Frigga and Go-See. In Qin Zhao's house, Go-See was a bit reserved. Do you want something to drink? Something special, Frigga said. I hope it's something I've never had before. Just then, an underling ran over with 2 drinks. The 2 drinks were black, but they were bubbling with red and green bubbles. Is this Coke? More accurately, it's Hell Coke, Qin Zhao said. Try it. It's helpful for people with magic power. It's fine even if you don't have magic power. My family and I often drink it. Before Frigga even drank it, she'd already analyzed how to make this so-called Hell Coke. Interesting concept. Frigga took a sip and her eyes lit up. It's indeed refreshing. Go-See, try it too. Oh. Thank you? Go-See was a bit distracted. Even though the Hell Coke was delicious, she wasn't in the mood to taste it. Qin Zhao glanced at Frigga. Why did she come with you? Please do me, or rather, do her a favor. Is this a request or a deal? Qin Zhao asked. If it was a deal, Qin Zhao didn't mind helping Frigga if she gave him something. If it was a request, then he could only apologize. He didn't have any relationship with Frigga at the moment. It's a deal, Frigga said. You know Vanaheim, right? If you help me, Vanaheim will be yours. What? Qin Zhao was a bit surprised. Using a world as a bargaining chip. This deal shouldn't be simple. No, it definitely wasn't simple. She will use a secret technique called stealing. When the time comes, she will summon an extremely powerful existence. As the target of the stealing, your mission is to suppress this extremely powerful existence and not kill it. Give me an accurate idea of how powerful it is. Using a world as a bargaining chip, Qin Zhao believed that Frigga's secret technique wouldn't be simple. It's like Odin at his peak, Frigga said. Powerful existence? Odin at his peak? You're not thinking of reviving Odin, right? Frigga shook her head. Simply put, it's Zeus, the god that popped out of your head. Are you familiar with the Olympian gods? You can summon Zeus just like that. From an enemy's perspective, it's indeed familiar. Frigga looked at Qinzhao and then at the frightened Go-Si. Enemy? Are you enemies with the Olympian gods? Do you know anything about the Olympians? I have a certain understanding. The Olympian god of war, Ares, is still my captive. Go-Si was speechless. What kind of people were these? He casually captured a war god as a captive. You had a war? Qinzhao asked curiously. Didn't Ares or my son Bader tell you? Qinzhao shook his head. They're thieves and robbers, Frigga said. They stole the power of the divine kingdom and turned it into their own, so I sealed them. Other than a few who escaped, all the gods on Mount Olympus were sealed by me. Qinzhao gasped. Frigga was the queen of Asgard, but she was just a queen. She'd actually sealed an entire race of gods by herself. The price was the complete extinction of the Vanir race. I was tricked by Odin and used the entire Vanir race as a sacrifice to seal the Olympian gods. Qinzhao raised Frigga's danger index by 100 points. If she could seal an entire race, she could definitely seal Qinzhao too. Frigga obviously felt the change in Qinzhao's gaze. She smiled and didn't explain further. How is it? Do you accept the entire condition? What's Vanir like now? Qinzhao needed to evaluate whether the entire Vanir world was valuable. Just as Frigga had said, she'd used the sacrifice of the Vanir race to seal the Olympian gods. Vanir was probably abandoned now, right? Vanir is a world full of vitality. That world gave birth to our race. Although the gods have fallen, it still has the ability to give birth to new gods. I haven't been to Vanir for thousands of years, so I don't know the exact situation there. But if Odin didn't destroy Vanir, then it's very likely that a young god has been born there. You have the right to become the divine king there. Even if you call yourself the god of creation, no one will oppose it. Qinzhao rolled his eyes. He didn't need a divine king or a god of creation. What era was this? Why were they still so superstitious? However, Qinzhao was still interested in the Vanir that Frigga spoke of. When I passed by Alfheim last time, it was also full of vitality. But your son Bader still refused to let me come into contact with that world. The reason was that I would destroy the peace there. The intelligent race in Alfheim are the elves, a race that believes in him. There are no intelligent races in Vanir, so the only intelligent ones are the newborn young gods. If you become the ruler there, even if the young gods oppose it, the war between you and them probably won't even be considered a war. Oh, what's the difference between the elves of Alfheim and them? Most of the elves in Alfheim are pure elves, the kind that Go-Si is afraid of becoming. They're very ordinary but also very pure. Of course, they're also very kind, so kind that even I can't bear to hurt them. As for the elves in this world, they're the exact opposite. They're no longer pure and kind. Frigga looked at Qinzhao. Do you accept this deal? Since you're willing to use a world as a bargaining chip, you can make other requests. For example, you want me to use resources to make her a strong person, instead of just letting me be a high-level fighter. Go-Si is very talented. She has the right to a better future. She's indeed very talented. She can wait until the foreseeable future, and use her talent to fulfill her abilities instead of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm. Your secret method didn't give her a better future. Her people don't have time to wait. Their bloodline deteriorates very quickly. In a few years, they'll completely turn into ordinary and pure elves. Didn't you say that this only appears in newborns? Who do you think gave birth to the newborns? Of course, their parents' bloodline deteriorates first, and then it's passed on to the newborns. Fine, this is your and hers decision. The deal is done. Before that, you haven't forgotten your job, right? Of course. I can start lessons anytime. Where's your daughter? Still in kindergarten. You can teach my little daughter first. I remember that your eldest daughter is only 2. Where's your youngest daughter? Has she awakened? Chapter 30:16. My daughter is 1 year old. She's still too young. Are you sure she's awakened? She awakened on the day she was born. Both Gosi and Frigga were speechless. The difference between people was always so obvious. Awakened on the day she was born? There was such a thing? How talented must one be to have such an awakening? Frigga had only planned to be little Gerlin's teacher. As for little Larissa, she was just an extra. When little Larissa grew up, she would teach her a few spells. But she didn't expect little Larissa's talent to be so incredible. Frigga was very sure that no one had awakened on the day they were born, even among the Protoss. It was hard to imagine how ridiculous little Larissa's talent was. Let me see that child. Little Larissa was currently being led by Portia and Zephyra. She was playing on the field outside. When Frigga saw little Larissa, she felt like her eyes were going to be blinded by this blessed girl. As the Nirvana witch, little Gerlin was already a heaven-defying existence. A witch of destruction had appeared every few generations. This was enough to show how talented little Gerlin was. Little Larissa wasn't that special. Apart from being talented, there was nothing special about her. But sometimes, when one's talent reached a certain level, they could really do whatever they wanted. Even Gosi felt jealous from the inside out when she saw little Larissa. If she had this talent, her clan probably wouldn't have to worry about continuing the blood elf bloodline. Being favored by the heavens wasn't enough to describe little Larissa's talent. Frigga didn't doubt that this child's future limit wouldn't be lower than hers. As for higher levels, it would depend on Qin Zhao's abilities. Darling, what's your name? Frigga asked in her softest tone. Little Larissa looked at the gentle and beautiful auntie before her. But she still turned her head to look at her father. Qin Zhao nodded. Little Larissa immediately smiled brightly. I'm Larissa. What spells do you know? Like this. Frigga reached out and revealed a small fireball. Little Larissa doesn't know. Papa didn't teach me. Frigga turned to look at him in surprise. You didn't teach her magic? In Frigga's opinion, Qin Zhao should have exposed little Larissa to magic long ago. Even if Qin Zhao didn't know how to teach, with Larissa's talent, she would probably learn it after watching a few times. I've heard that being exposed to magic at a young age will affect your growth. Frigg stared at Qin Zhao with a dark expression. Who told me to kill him? Isn't that the case? Do you plan to let your daughter learn dark magic, necromancy, or sacrificial magic? No. Don't tell me you plan to let her learn these spells. As long as you don't let her learn these spells, it won't affect her growth. It's just like some of your human sports programs. Some programs can help children grow better, while others will affect their physical and mental development. Qin Zhao thought about it and realized that it made sense. Papa, can I learn magic? Although little Larissa was only 1 year old, she knew how to do magic. But in the whole family, except for Mama and Big Sister, everyone else knew magic. So little Larissa was already used to magic. Sure. Qin Zhao nodded. Yay. Little Larissa was so happy that she danced and kept throwing fireballs out of her palms. Huh. I thought you didn't know? Frigga asked, confused. Yeah, but Papa agreed, so I know. Gosi was hurt again. She'd been known as a genius among geniuses since she was young. So she couldn't help but compare herself to little Larissa. But what made her despair was that even though she was a genius among geniuses, she was no different from a stupid pig in little Larissa's eyes. What else can you do? Soon, Frigga realized that little Larissa knew a lot of spells. She'd learned them all from the people around her. She knew a little bit of all kinds of random spells. She didn't have any systematic learning, so she didn't have any system she was good at. Even Qin Zhao was a little scared. Little Larissa had unknowingly learned so many spells. This was also because the family didn't have any taboos. So, they didn't avoid little Larissa from casting spells. They also didn't expect little Larissa's talent to be so terrifying. Basically, she could learn most spells after seeing them once. Little Larissa had learned them, but she'd never used them. She knew that Qin Zhao wouldn't let her learn them. So, she didn't dare to use them. She was afraid that Qin Zhao would think she was a bad kid. Until today, when Qin Zhao personally agreed, she dared to use them. Frigga and Gosi couldn't describe their shock. In Frigga's life, she'd seen countless geniuses who could always create all kinds of miracles. But compared to little Larissa, those geniuses and miracles seemed so dim. Soon little Jerlin returned. Frigga had seen little Jerlin before. She was also a genius among geniuses. She wasn't a genius who bragged about herself like Gosi. Awakening before 2 years old meant that she was in the top 3 awakening ages among magicians. Plus, little Jerlin was the 3rd knight. Plus, she was the Witch of Destruction. This gave her talent that wasn't below little Larissa's. Gosi even felt inferior. She was a so-called genius, but she was only the 2nd knight. When she'd awakened at 8, she'd been quite proud. But compared to this pair of sisters, in that case, he would seem insignificant. Today, Frigga didn't teach little Jerlin and Larissa magic. She mainly wanted to see their talent. Then, she'd come up with a teaching plan for them. But when she took a look, she almost shut herself up. The sisters' talent made even her, the god of magic, jealous. As for Gosi, she really shut herself out. What was the point of learning magic? What was the point of training? No matter how well she practiced, could she be as talented as Qin Zhao? Could she have a good father like Qin Zhao? In the past, Gosi didn't believe that all roads led to Rome. Now she believed it. But some people were born in Rome. On the way back, Frigga glanced at the despondent Gosi. What, you're shocked? Yes. Gosi didn't deny it. A pained expression hung on her face. Then I'll tell you something that can make you happy. What else can make me happy? Even though your talent is different from Asgard, your upper limit is the same. The only difference is that one took 10 years and the other 100. Chapter 30:17. Frigga was just comforting her. But Gosi felt that she couldn't be happy. Limit. Not many people in the world could touch it. Most people would be stuck halfway through their leveling. Also, how many people could actually get stronger as they got older? When a normal cultivator reached a certain age, all aspects would start to decline severely. Only a few old monsters could do it. The older they got, the stronger they got. So, Gosi didn't have any hope of reaching the limit in 100 years. Little Jerlin and little Larissa would reach their limit in 10 years. No, 20 years, to be exact. They'd only be in their early 20s. That was the best age. But how long would Gosi need? 100 years. At her current age. 120 years? Would he be able to live for that long? Even if she could, she'd probably be in a decline. Xiao He and Carrie had already passed the trial that Qin Zhao had left for them. But it wasn't the end of their suffering. It was just the beginning. The difficulty wasn't up to Qin Zhao's will. It was up to him to strengthen or weaken it. So, for Xiao He and Carrie, it was far from passing. They'd gone from the initial resistance to numbness, and now they were used to it. Just like the saying, when you can't fight back, every night Qin Zhao would have someone from the supernatural organization come and watch them. They didn't want to die in the trial. This wasn't the Tower of Trials where they could revive on the spot. That was Qin Zhao's ability. If they died, they would really die. Actually, they'd been trapped in the trial for almost a month. Apart from not being able to move freely, it didn't affect their daily lives. They could even go online. Moreover, they'd even called the police in the first few days. They hoped that the police could save them. Clearly, they'd overestimated the LAPD. The police walked around the community and said that they'd sue them for making a false alarm. Now, they'd learned their lesson and stopped resisting. There was no point in resisting. Qin Zhao had only taught them one thing during this time. The fist was the root of everything. Right now, they had to risk their lives just to survive in this trial ground. It was unrealistic to fight Qin Zhao head-on. After an arduous night of fighting, Carrie and Xiao He dragged their weary bodies home. Xiao He, Help me prepare breakfast. I don't want to move anymore. Carrie felt as though her body was about to fall apart. He slumped on the sofa like a corpse. She turned on the television, but she was too lazy to even lift her eyelids. The television was broadcasting the news. Suddenly, Carrie seemed to hear something. She jumped up and stared at the television screen with wide eyes. Xiaohe, come quickly. Xiaohe walked out slowly, holding a glass of milk. What is it? Look at the news. According to the European police, a group of people who call themselves the New Era have recently appeared. They claim that mist will descend upon the world again. They will restart the ritual and find the gods of the past. They are also requesting the government to recognize their legitimacy. However, at present, all the countries in Europe have identified the New Era as a cult and have put several leaders of the organization on the wanted list. They are the leader, Arona, the deputy leader, Bayan, and the guardian elder. Xiaohe looked at the news listlessly and asked, What's wrong? What does this cult have to do with you? My vice-sect master, Bayan, used to be a hoodlum on our street. So what? It's not surprising that someone like him started a cult. But he used to be an ordinary person. Maybe he's a liar, or maybe you didn't see through him. Xiaohe said disapprovingly. I thought you had something to make such a fuss about. Actually, when Carrie said that they knew each other, it was more than just knowing each other. Bayan was her adoptive father, and she had learned all her thieving skills from him. As for whether Bayan really knew magic, she would never believe it. She knew Bayan too well. When Bayan was young, he was a successful entrepreneur. He had adopted Carrie when she was 10 years old. However, in less than a year, Bayan suddenly went bankrupt. Because Bayan could no longer provide Carrie with the money she needed. So, Carrie returned to the orphanage. However, the connection between Carrie and Bayan was not broken. Then, he began to mingle in the streets. If he had any magic skills at that time, he would not have to steal to earn some money and buy some insignificant gifts for Carrie. Thinking back to the last time they met, it was already half a year ago. Because Bayan committed theft and was sentenced to half a year in prison. But Carrie did not expect to see Bayan again on the TV news. And he had actually become a high-ranking member of a cult. Carrie could not help but worry about her adoptive father. Bayan might not be rich, but he was definitely a responsible father. At least in Carrie's eyes, Bayan was worthy of her calling him father. Seeing this news, Carrie could not help but worry about Bayan. All the tiredness and sleepiness disappeared at this moment. There was only worry for Bayan. What's your relationship with that deputy leader Bayan? Xiaohe noticed the change in Carrie's expression. I know him, but I'm not familiar with him. Carrie replied casually. This answer could protect herself and Bayan. It was not that she did not trust Xiaohe. It was that Carrie had been in the streets since she was a child. She knew that some bad thing started from an unintentional slip of the tongue. Carrie was in a dilemma. On one hand, she could not even protect herself. She could not even control her own freedom. Moreover, she had to save that unreliable adoptive father. But she couldn't just ignore it. If you really have a problem, you can call Mr. Chen. Actually, Xiaohe had already thought through some problems recently. Qin Zhao seemed to be torturing them. In fact, he was training them. Although they were living a life of ecstasy here, the increase in their strength was real. Only Carrie was still in the dark about it. Or rather, it was the difference in Eastern and Western thinking. Carrie could only feel Qin Zhao's evil intentions. What's the use of finding him? Carrie did not want to contact Qin Zhao. At least, we need his permission to leave here. Carrie was like a deflated balloon. Yes, without Qin Zhao's permission, they could not even leave here. Or we have the ability to completely clear this place. We don't even know the upper limit of the difficulty. How do we clear it? Chapter 30:18. Chen, I'm going back to Europe. 23rd Blood Mary came to bid Qin Zhao farewell. Really? So soon? Qin Zhao had thought that 23rd Blood Mary would need more time. He didn't expect her to go back so soon. Yes, it's chaotic in Europe. A few groups have realized the arrival of the spiritual qi tide. They're eager to open up the spiritual world. Chen Zhao remained silent. Everyone had their own thoughts. Chen Zhao was the type that didn't support or object. However, Chen Zhao's job was to kill this idea in the cradle. After all, most people and the government didn't need a new era. They needed to maintain the current state. How's the progress with your divine kingdom? It's completed. Now there are just some details to deal with. A smile appeared on 23rd Blood Mary's face. Her trip to Los Angeles had come to a successful end. From now on, she didn't need to worry about her lifespan anymore. She'd solved the biggest crisis. Now she was a god. A true god. Do you want to try my divine kingdom? Sure. A patch of grayish-white suddenly spread across the sky. As the grayish-white spread, the environment around Chen Zhao and 23rd Blood Mary also changed. As the grayish-white formed a circle, Chen Zhao's senses completely lost contact with the outside world. There were only snow-covered mountains and piercingly cold winds. Is this your divine kingdom? Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt the air become extremely heavy. 23rd Blood Mary's divine power was air. She could change the weight of the air. At the same time, she could control the temperature and humidity. How can your divine kingdom attack? If it's just what I feel now, it probably won't pose any threat to me. Chen Zhao wasn't being arrogant. He was just stating a fact. The change in the environment only caused some trouble for Chen Zhao. It didn't even affect Chen Zhao's combat ability. I can increase the weight of the air to an unimaginable level, so the other materials in the divine kingdom will rise and then fall. It's similar to your meteorite. Chen Zhao's eyes brightened. This is amazing, he said sincerely. I know this isn't enough for you. Chen Zhao shrugged. It couldn't be helped. They were a whole realm apart now. He could only say that it wouldn't be easy for him to win against the 23rd Blood Mary. But it was impossible to lose. Chen Zhao stood still. Even the 23rd Blood Mary might not be able to bite him. Chen Zhao was an enhancer. His physical strength and defense had reached the extreme. This was Chen Zhao's greatest advantage. In order to defeat Chen Zhao, he first had to break through his defense. After that, he would need more power to deal damage to Chen Zhao. But that in itself was impossible. How big is your divine kingdom? About the same size as California. That big? Chen Zhao gasped. Because I don't lack materials. Chen Zhao was speechless. Yes, the 23rd Blood Mary had collected so many fragments of the divine kingdom. There was no need to worry about not having enough materials. She could build as big a divine kingdom as she wanted. Chen Zhao and the 23rd Blood Mary were just testing the waters. Then, the 23rd Blood Mary withdrew her divine kingdom. I should go. Goodbye. In fact, considering their current strength and status, it was impossible for them to do so. It didn't matter if they left Los Angeles. After all, there were too many ways to meet in this era. Even if there was something important, he could reach them with a phone call. After the 23rd Blood Mary left, Chen Zhao went to the underground base where Ares was locked up. Ares wasn't in a good state of mind recently. He looked up at Chen Zhao, who had just walked in. You haven't come to see me in a long time. You don't look like you're in a good state. My divine kingdom has been destroyed by you. My body has suffered great damage and my power has been sealed. Now I'm so weak that I'm about to die. If you want to kill me, do it as soon as possible. That way, you'll be able to add more color to your battle record. I don't want to die quietly in this dark corner. This was probably Ares' last bit of stubbornness. It was also to preserve his last bit of dignity. Chen Zhao passed the contract to Ares. Take a look. If there's no problem, sign it. The 23rd Blood Mary, Zhang Tianyi, and Bifla had helped Chen Zhao make this contract. Ares scrutinized the contents of the contract. You want me to serve you for 300 years? Yes. I don't have that much time. My divine kingdom has been destroyed and I'm losing control of my power. Soon I'll completely collapse. Didn't you read the terms? While you're serving me, I'm obligated to treat any injuries you have, any injuries that are within my capabilities. The damage caused by the destruction of the Divine Kingdom is irreversible unless it's repaired. Qin Zhao took out a metal box and tossed it to Ares. Is this enough? Ares opened the box. Inside were some fragments of the Divine Kingdom. Where did you get it? That's not something you should be concerned about. Ares decisively signed his name on the contract. Then the contract was ignited. Qin Zhao brought Ares out of the prison. I thought it would be difficult, or even impossible. No one wants to die, Ares said matter-of-factly. Even God doesn't want to die. You're stronger than me, so I can accept submitting to you. Do you need me to arrange an identity for you? No need. I'll find an identity that I like. Qin Zhao nodded. He'd recruited Ares mainly because he needed him in times of need. Times were different now. Qin Zhao didn't plan on ruling the world. But Qin Zhao needed more trump cards. What could he do by relying on himself? Qin Zhao couldn't do everything himself. Some things had to be done by others. The identity of Ares was still very valuable. After all, a living god was more valuable than a dead one. He had collected a lot of dead gods. He didn't care if he didn't have Ares or Ares. Recently, there were more and more supernatural incidents on the news. Even though the supernatural organization suppressed most of the news, there were still some that slipped through the net. Of course, there wasn't really strong evidence to prove the existence of supernatural incidents. After all, the supernatural organization mainly suppressed news like this with direct evidence. Some spiritualists also purposely exposed themselves to ordinary people. As such incidents became more and more frequent, Qin Zhao believed that the government wouldn't be able to hide it for long. The true Great Era wasn't far away. Chapter 30:19. Qin Zhao's phone rang. It was Xiao He. Qin Zhao picked it up. Mr. Qin, we want to talk to you. Talk about what? Can you come to our place? Just say it over the phone, Qin Zhao said impatiently. I'm busy. No. Actually, we feel that we've grown stronger recently, so we want to spar with you. Oh. Qin Zhao chuckled strangely. Sure, I'll go tonight. Xiao He nodded at Carrie beside her. He agreed, but the next part is the most troublesome. Don't worry. Even if we can't win, we can at least surprise him. It was late at night. A blue sports car drove into the neighborhood. Boom, boom, boom. Qin Zhao got out of the car and looked at the wrecked car. Qin Zhao realized that his entire series of sports cars was really full of misfortune. Right now, Xiao He and Carrie were lying in the distance in their combat suits, watching the situation with binoculars. It looks like the first trap was useless. He's not injured at all from such a violent explosion. What's his body made of? This is the mentality of weaklings like us and the necessary qualities of the strong. If he could get injured from such a trap, he would have died hundreds of times already. Xiao He said. Then why fight? Just surrender. We can't surrender. That trap was just the appetizer. There's more to come. Xiao Wu also squatted beside Carrie. Qin Zhao didn't care about Carrie and Xiao He's suicidal behavior. He was unperturbed. It had nothing to do with him anyway. They could do whatever they wanted. It had nothing to do with him. Their current plot was probably echoing in other people's ears. In fact, Qin Zhao knew where Xiao He and Carrie were. However, he didn't hear their conversation. The two little guys were pretty smart. They knew how to seal off the area around them with magic and put them in an enclosed area. It was hard for the outside world to sense their existence. If it wasn't for the little world, he would probably be tricked by them. Qin Zhao walked toward where the two were. Suddenly, there was nothing under his feet. Qin Zhao had fallen into the trap. The next moment, the magic in the trap was activated. White light suddenly flashed in the trap. Then Qin Zhao felt his body being sealed by a force. Anti-magic field? No, it's not the anti-magic domain. Just as he was about to activate it, he felt that the trap was draining his magic power. What followed was a violent explosion. Success! Xiao He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. You succeeded? It's a success. That trap will form an anti-magic domain for a short period of time. If he uses his mana in that area, his mana will be instantly sucked away, supplying the powerful rootless fire in the trap. Then Bua! Xiao He explained proudly. Are you sure? Definitely. But he seems to have escaped from the trap, and he looks completely fine. How is this possible? Xiao He picked up the binoculars and saw that Qin Zhao was indeed unscathed. Her expression immediately darkened. How is it possible? That was such a violent explosion. Why isn't he injured at all? Qin Zhao actually gave this trap a very high score. Other than not harming him, this trap had already played its role. At least as a trap, it was quite good at being unexpected. Qin Zhao continued forward. Just then, rotten arms crawled out of the ground and gripped Qin Zhao's legs tightly. Necromancy? Qin Zhao was somewhat surprised. This wasn't Carrie's spell. Xiao He knew necromancy? Although it wasn't called necromancy in the East, there wasn't much difference in essence. Qin Zhao wasn't in a hurry to break free. There had to be something else. As expected, dozens of flickering, unstable spirits suddenly charged at him. Boom, 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 the continuous impact of the explosions almost blasted the scene into pieces. The terrain had also changed. It was clear how powerful the explosions were. Wow! Xiao He shouted in excitement. Then she looked through the binoculars and realized that Qin Zhao had walked out of the explosion unscathed again. How is this possible? Even this didn't hurt him? Xiao He's good mood came and went quickly. I have no choice but to activate the ultimate trap. Gritting her teeth, Xiao He took out a remote control. Yes, her last trap was activated with a remote control. It was also very easy to activate. Boom, 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 a series of explosions rang out. In the midst of the explosions, fire sprinklers sprayed toward the central area. Then, electric arcs spread toward the central area. I don't believe he can come out unscathed from such an explosion. What did you do? How can you create such a powerful explosion? Carrie's face was filled with shock and disbelief. It's simple. I blew up the gas pipe, Xiao He said. Xiao He said, I have also built a simple discharge field. I have already buried the electric cables, and the water sprayed out by the sprinklers is the conductor. I feel like you want to kill him. Think carefully before you answer. Just then, Qin Zhao's voice rang out in their crimson. Why are you here? Xiao He was dumbfounded. Carrie was also shocked by Qin Zhao's sudden appearance. He was unscathed again. Xiao He was in complete despair this time. Magic and technology combined, but Qin Zhao's skin wasn't even scratched. Moreover, he had suddenly appeared in their crimson like a ghost. There's such a heavy smell of gas in the air. Do you think my nose is just for show? Xiao He's face was full of disappointment. Okay, tell me what you wanted to do. Mr. Qin, we actually wanted to test our strength. Xiao He hurriedly explained. We already knew that this trap is useless against you. Apart from being a little weak, everything else is surprising. Mr. Qin, how do you rate our performance? 5. Only 5? Mr. Qin, didn't you say that our trap was surprising? Yes, but in the end, as your target, I'm unscathed. A trap can't hurt anyone, so what's the point? Okay, let's talk business. You didn't call me here just to tease me, Qin Zhao said. Of course, I hope you can find a good reason. Mr. Qin, we actually have something important to do, and need to leave for a while. What is it? Chapter 30-20. Expressionlessly, Qin Zhao looked at Xiao He and Carrie. The two girls were so nervous that they were about to explode. After a moment of silence, Qin Zhao asked, What is it? It's like this. Carrie has an adoptive father. Wait. She has an adoptive father? Qin Zhao remembered that Qing Ping's sage had said that Carrie didn't have any relatives in her investigation. She'd grown up in an orphanage. Chen Zhao looked at Carrie seriously. Tell me the truth. You have an adoptive father? Yes, but not really. When I was in the orphanage, I was adopted by him. Later, he went bankrupt, so I was sent back to the orphanage. But I've always kept in touch with him. And then? Recently, I realized that he's in trouble. Carrie wasn't sure either. It wasn't trouble. But she still felt that being with a cult would be troublesome even if it wasn't. What kind of trouble? I'm not sure. I think he joined a cult. It's useless. Cultists are all crazy. Your adoptive father's been brainwashed. I suggest you kill him to prevent him from harming society. Qin Zhao didn't feel bad at all. If you tell me about that cult, I can help you get rid of it while I'm at it. How could Carrie agree? In her eyes, Qin Zhao was really cold-blooded. If he knew about her adoptive father might really be killed by Qin Zhao. Mr. Qin, give me a few days. I promise I'll come back after it's done. Carrie looked at Qin Zhao sincerely. How can you promise? Seeing that pretending to be pitiful was useless, Carrie gritted her teeth and thought. A moment later, Carrie looked up and said, I'll sign a contract with you. Qin Zhao's lips curled into a smile. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I agree to your request. Qin Zhao finally relented. Soon, Qin Zhao drew up a contract. In the contract, Carrie had to come back within 15 days. Otherwise, the contract would be triggered automatically. Qin Zhao could lock onto Carrie immediately. If she came back within the time limit, she would listen to any of Qin Zhao's arrangements for the next 3 years. But if she didn't come back within the time limit, she would be enslaved by Qin Zhao for 10 years. Carrie had no choice but to sign the contract. She had planned to bargain with Qin Zhao for a while, but Qin Zhao was right. But reality did not go as he wished. Qin Zhao had the attitude of, if you want to sign it, then sign it. If you don't, then forget it. Although Carrie gritted her teeth in anger, she still signed the contract in the end. Of course, she also made a small request. Xiao He also wanted to be her helper and gain temporary freedom. After completing the contract, Qin Zhao lifted the restriction on entering and leaving the community. All right, you can come and go now. Remember, the two of you only have 15 days of free time. If you don't come back by yourselves within 15 days, I will personally go and find you. Both of them felt the same way. They all knew that Qin Zhao wasn't joking. Just as Qin Zhao was about to leave, Carrie suddenly stopped him. Mr. Qin, any other questions? Can you lend us some money to fund our activities? According to the bank interest, how much do you want? How much can you borrow? Qin Zhao chuckled. How much did Carrie look down on him by asking this question? I can borrow as much as you dare. $100,000? Carrie asked tentatively. Even Xiao He could not help but roll her eyes. How much did Carrie look down on Qin Zhao? Xiao He did not know how much money Qin Zhao had. But she was sure that it would be an astronomical number. This is a check for $1 million. It's also an advance on your salary for the next 10 years. Wait. I didn't plan on asking for $1 million. That's too much. Also, according to the contract, we have to be enslaved by you for 10 years if we don't come back in 15 days. It hasn't even started yet. No, I have a feeling that you won't come back in 15 days. Take it. It's better than nothing. When Carrie received the check for $1 million, she did not know what she was feeling right now. It was clearly an unprecedented amount of money. But why could she not be happy? Carrie, what do we do now? What's your plan? Cash this check first. Xiao He was silent for a while. Good idea. She had never seen so much money before. She did not even have 1,000,000 yuan, much less $1 million. The next day, they did not sleep at all. With such a huge sum of money, they had forgotten the purpose of borrowing it. Their minds were filled with how to spend the money. Yes. That's right. They had almost forgotten their original intentions. Now they just wanted to have some fun. Early in the morning, they ran to the bank to cash the check. With the bank's credit card, they really felt like they were on cloud nine. Then, they went on a shopping spree for the whole day. The two of them didn't come to their senses until they finished spending at the high-end restaurant. "Carrie, what did we do today?" Xiaohe said, covering her face. "We wasted the whole day." Carrie's expression was also terrible. "Don't worry. We still have plenty of time." Then, the next day, they went on a shopping spree again. That night, Carrie roared, "That guy did it on purpose. He purposely gave us so much money to make us fall. He's a demon." Xiaohe felt the same way. She knew that they had something important to do and that they did not have much time left. However, they could not help it. Since breakfast, they had been lost in the dream of being rich. "Carrie, we can't go on like this. We need to act quickly. After we bring your adoptive father back, we still have time to play. Just not now." "All right, I understand." Carrie nodded heavily. On the third day, they were defeated by the demon of desire again. They fell into depravity once more, sinking into the pleasure of shopping. On the third night, they repented once more and firmly decided that they had to do something important the next day. On the fourth day, they finally overcame all the difficulties. However, it was not really difficult. "Carrie, where are we going now?" "To Bayan, my adoptive father's house." "Why are we going there? Can't you give him a call? Let him come back on his own. If I could, I would just call him at home instead of asking him to let us out." "All right. Why are we going to your adoptive father's house? He should be in Europe, right?" Chapter 30-21. "I don't have his contact number, but we agreed that if he's not at home and I can't contact him, I can go to his house and find him. He'll leave some contact numbers." "Are you sure your adoptive father's just a bankrupt thief? Not some kind of spy or something? It's not as complicated as you think. He just has a lot of enemies and creditors, so he's always prepared to run." "Okay, that's a good reason." After wasting 4 days, Carrie finally got into the swing of things. On the same day, they bought a flight to Switzerland. "President, do you have time now? Come to the headquarters." "Sure, I'll go now." After arriving at the headquarters, West tossed a document to Chen Zhao. "The National Youth Supernatural Fighting Competition." Chen Zhao flipped through a few pages and put it down silently. He held his forehead. "Is the government joking?" "No, it's serious. It's in Los Angeles and hosted by the Supernatural Organization." "I'm sure now that the government is joking." Chen Zhao wasn't interested at all. Very uninterested. A competition for a group of youths? The supernatural world in North America wasn't active to begin with. Those who could participate had to be awakened first. This was already a part of it. Then there was an age restriction. Since they were youths, they couldn't be very old. How many awakened youths could there be in America? Therefore, it was destined to be a battle between a few families with a certain amount of heritage. Actually, there were similar competitions for youths in other major regions. Whether it was Huaxia, Japan, or Europe, they all had similar competitions. However, the most important thing to hold a competition like this was that there had to be enough active supernatural areas. In such active areas, family inheritance had certain advantages, but each power and individual would have their own opportunities too. There were many participants, but no one could guarantee victory. But what about the Americans? When the tiger was gone, the monkey was king. Actually, the Supernatural Organization was the monkey king. The Supernatural Organization was only average in the entire world. But in North America, they were the top supernatural organization. There weren't many people in the first place. Now, they were choosing the champion among them. It felt like the champion was already decided. "There's no other way." Wes shrugged. "Now that the government has also noticed the spirit energy tide, they want to make use of it to reserve talents in the supernatural field. The government has also realized this problem, so they have set the age limit of the competition at 22 years old. This way, there will be a lot more people participating. A 22-year-old is still considered a teenager? Isn't it better to just call it a youth tournament? There's nothing we can do about it. If we really wanted to have a youth competition, the number of participants would definitely not be enough. In fact, it's just a youth competition in the name of youth. Must you do it? We are funded by the government, so we still have to do the tasks assigned by the government. All right then, you make your own arrangements. This has nothing to do with me. Our people won't get involved, right? Our men are not involved. How could West arrange his own people? Right now, they were walking the path of the elite. They had a lot of resources and rich combat experience. The younger generation of ordinary clans really couldn't compare. Therefore, if their children were to participate, it was very likely that they would break out of the encirclement. Especially Jalanash, Helis, and more. They were all typical representatives. There was also Chinzhao's student, Lit Grove. He wasn't a captain, but he was at least an official member. Now that he was in Angelite's team, his performance was quite different. Basically, this competition was to find talents for the government. How could they give their people to the government for free? Even West had the mentality of just dealing with the matter. How could they really give their own people away? Who's paying for this competition? Chinzhao suddenly asked. The government's special department earmarks. Will the psionic team participate too? Probably. For them, this is a chance to accumulate experience. They also want the government to see their results. The supernatural organization didn't care about the opportunity to gain combat experience because they had plenty of opportunities to do so. Moreover, it wasn't in the ring, but on a real battlefield. But other forces might not have this chance. Whatever. If they want to participate, then let them. Chen Zhao shook his head. They had never been a match for the supernatural organization. The organization had always treated them as targets. Just then, Ruan Faxben ran in. President, Mr. West, I hope I'm not disturbing you? You're already in. West said, annoyed. Are you looking for me or the president? I'm looking for the president. I found a young man recently. I think he's talented and he's in L.A. right now. President, how about you come with me? Go find a disciple yourself. Why should I go with him? Do you want me to beat him up? If that's the case, I'm happy to help. Not really, as long as he doesn't ask for something as ridiculous as that guy last time. But if he needs to show off his strength, then give him a heavy blow. Chen Zhao finally understood. He wanted him to go with him and scare him when necessary. I'm free too, West said. Let's go together. Ruan Faxben shrugged. It didn't matter if it was 2 or 3. Along the way, Ruan Faxben told Chen Zhao about the kid he liked. 14. His parents aren't very rich. They're both ordinary people. His father is a firefighter and his mother is unemployed. Then how did he learn alchemy? Chen Zhao asked. He already has a master? Unlike other spiritualists, alchemists had to have a master to teach them even if they were awakened. It's an alchemy book I left behind. In fact, a few years ago, when he was awakened, I secretly left him an alchemy book. I've also been observing him secretly. If he shows talent in alchemy, I'll get in touch with him. Isn't the chance too low? If you do the same thing a few times, you'll eventually meet someone with talent. How many awakened kids did you find? Not many, just 100 or so. Ruan Faxben said. Chen Zhao was speechless. West was speechless. How did you find so many awakened kids? I feel like the supernatural organization hasn't dealt with as many awakened cases in the past 2 years as you did, and they're all kids. It's simple. I've created a magical device that can detect the abnormal spiritual waves on ordinary people. The spiritual waves produced by ordinary people either come into contact with a spiritualist, or they've awakened. With a little analysis, we'll be able to determine if they've awakened. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.